My parents liked my twin sister more than me. They spent all the money they were saving for my wedding on her. So I stopped talking to them after saying no to my mom's selfish request. I'm 23 years old and have a twin sister named Allison. We don't get along. Actually, we don't even talk. The same goes for my parents. We used to talk, even though they didn't treat me well. But for the past 2 years, I've stayed away from them, and they haven't tried to contact me until now. Allison is 12 minutes older than me, so she's automatically the favorite because she's older. My parents only wanted one child because that's what they had planned for, and they couldn't afford to raise two. But when they found out they were having twins, it was too late to change their plans, and Mom didn't want to take any risks. I learned about this when I was in high school from my uncle, who was drunk at a Thanksgiving party. That was the day I gave up trying to make my parents like me. In those circumstances, they did the most typical thing. They had two children but chose to only love one, which happened to be Allison, not me. Since we were kids, the competition between me and Allison was intense. Whatever she did, I tried to do better just to get our parents' approval, but it only made them dislike me more for outshining their favorite. Honestly, Allison wasn't even that interested in being better than me. She just wanted people to praise her, so she pretended to care about our competition. I have to admit, she was skilled at manipulation, making people believe she was genuinely hurt when I outed her. This resulted in many people validating her and putting me down to make her feel better. These people included my parents, some relatives, and even some classmates from high school. So in the end, I got good grades and participated in many activities to outshine my sister, while she received attention, validation, and sympathy from my parents and others because I was seen as the bad guy for overshadowing her. Looking back, I wouldn't change my achievements, but I do wish I had rubbed them in her face more. Then 2 years ago, we turned 21 and had both graduated. She graduated from a regular college, while I graduated from one of the top business schools in the state. Not only that, I was the valedictorian and had received a scholarship, which saved my parents a lot of money on my education. You might think I'm crazy, but I actually hoped my parents would be happy for me. Instead, they focused all their attention on Allison and her uncertain future because she had barely passed her studies. Both of us had moved back home, but while I was already working as an intern from home, Allison was struggling to find a job and facing rejection after rejection. My parents were more concerned about her, barely acknowledging my achievements or congratulating me. I wasn't surprised, but I was definitely disappointed. I tried to hide my feelings because I was still living with them and hadn't saved enough to move out yet, so I kept quiet about how hurt I was. But after our 21st birthday, I couldn't take it anymore. I expected them to do something special for us. But the day before our birthday, I found out they had all gone to the beach with Allison and her friends, leaving me alone at home with just a note and a $50 gift card. I felt utterly shattered. They had taken Allison on a beach trip while I got nothing but a brief note and a small gift. Many things have been unfair in my childhood, but this was the last straw. It was so disappointing and heartless that I decided to move out that very day and never look back. I had a few friends who offered to let me stay with them until I could find my own place, which wouldn't take long because the company I was interning at was likely going to hire me after the internship. So I only needed a place to stay for a maximum of 2 months. I packed my things and moved in with a friend without telling my parents or sister, and I haven't looked back since. They didn't miss me enough to ask me to come back. They did call me the day after I moved out, but not to wish me a happy birthday. They wanted to inform me that they'd be back soon and mentioned that I should probably fix the leaky tap. I told them I had moved out, hoping for some kind of reaction, but there was none. My parents seemed fine with it, and Allison didn't care. That was the last meaningful conversation I had with my family. Since then, I haven't visited them, and they haven't reached out to me either. Occasionally, I'd hear about Allison from my friends, but that was the extent of my knowledge about her life. They were unaware of my parents, and my parents knew little about me. Over the past 2 years, I've worked hard and now have my own place. It's not extravagant, but it's a comfortable apartment in a good neighborhood. The rent is manageable with my income, which is quite an achievement considering the struggles many people my age face. I'm content with how my life has unfolded, and I've made a conscious effort to keep thoughts of my family at bay. I recently learned that Allison got married to a businessman much older than her and is now enjoying life in California. I thought everything was fine with my family until 2 days ago when my uncle called, informing me that my parents had been in a serious car accident and wanted to see me urgently. I hurried to the hospital as soon as I could because, despite everything, I'm not heartless. When I arrived, I learned that they had already been there for a couple of days, recovering from their injuries. Their car had been hit by a truck, and although they survived, they were seriously hurt. Unfortunately, they didn't have health insurance because my dad believed in self-sufficiency and thought we wouldn't need hospital care. It's one of the most absurd beliefs I've ever encountered. They had initially reached out to my sister, but she refused to come back or assist them. She felt it was inappropriate for our parents to ask for financial help from her wealthy husbands so soon after her wedding. She didn't want to appear like a gold digger to her spouse. She refused to return because she felt she couldn't abandon her home and her 2 stepchildren, who weren't biologically hers, but her husband's from a previous marriage. She was busy playing the role of a happy family with her husband's relatives, neglecting her own parents in the hospital after a severe car accident. Even as she wanted to help with the bills, she couldn't afford to, as she was solely dependent on her husband. It was a harsh reality check, shattering the illusion of being the favored daughter and the golden child. I was shocked that they hadn't even bothered to contact me first. When my uncle mentioned that my parents now expected me to cover their medical expenses, I was furious. The amount was substantial, and it would take me a long time to recover financially. I hesitated to spend so much, especially on people who had never shown me any love or care throughout my life. I knew they had other family members who could take care of them, and even if I didn't pay, someone else would step in. It's just that it would be more embarrassing for them to borrow money from others, and they'll likely have to repay it much sooner than they would have to repay me. They explained this while asking me to cover the bills and even promised a quick repayment. So I'm torn. I can either refuse to pay, saving myself from humiliation, or I can cover their expenses, sacrificing my own money and waiting for reimbursement. Honestly, I'm not inclined to help them at all. We haven't spoken in 2 years, and our relationship has been strained for as long as I can remember. They feel like strangers to me now, so I don't feel compelled to assist them. But then again, if I don't help, I'm no better than Allison, which is disheartening. So I'm unsure what to do. Update 1. Hi there, I've made the tough decision not to assist my parents. It wasn't easy, but I'm confident their medical expenses will be covered by other means. They only reached out to me because they were too proud to ask other relatives for help. I haven't informed them of my decision yet. How do you even begin to tell your family you won't be assisting with their medical bills after a serious accident? It's been nearly 5 days since I last saw them, and after reflecting on the comments, I realized I was still unconsciously competing with Allison. Seeing that she didn't offer assistance to our parents, I felt compelled to prove I was the better daughter. I suppose I'll always have that competitive streak, no matter how hard I try. It's become a part of who I am. Many comments rightfully criticized my parents' lack of health insurance, and I couldn't agree more. My father's decision to forego insurance, thinking he was a flawless driver, was incredibly foolish. If I had been involved in their lives, I would have insisted on insurance. He didn't even insure his car, which adds to the recklessness of his choices. They're fortunate that the accident was the truck driver's fault. Otherwise, they'd be responsible for covering the car repairs as well. As for their financial situation, which many of you inquired about, I'd say my parents are comfortable. They're neither wealthy nor struggling. My dad holds a managerial position in his company, and my mom works in HR at a smaller firm. Together, their income is sufficient, especially now that they no longer have to support me or Allison. While growing up, we never faced financial stress, but we also couldn't live extravagantly. We were solidly middle class, and that hasn't changed. I can't understand why my parents wouldn't be able to cover their own medical bills. If they can borrow money with the promise of repayment, they should be able to manage their expenses themselves. They haven't explained the reason to me, and I doubt I'll find out anytime soon. Update 2. I finally mustered the courage to inform my parents that I wouldn't be assisting with their expenses. They had been calling me persistently for the past week, and yesterday I realized I couldn't keep ignoring them until they were discharged from the hospital. So I answered their calls and explained my decision. As expected, they didn't react well. My mom unleashed her anger on me, despite her broken ribs, accusing me of being ungrateful, among other things. My dad simply disowned me and hung up after my mom finished berating me. Surprisingly, their reaction didn't hurt as much as I anticipated. I realized I hadn't felt loved by them in a long time. They hadn't made any effort to contact me or check on me for 2 years after I moved out following their neglect on an important birthday. So I've never really had parents anyway. I'll just continue living my life as I have been for the past 2 years, and even before that. Their reaction doesn't affect me as much as they thought it would. After the call with my parents, my uncle called to give me an earful, but I hung up after a few seconds because I didn't need that negativity from others. Whatever they think of me doesn't matter anymore. My uncle later texted me, informing me that my parents had decided to use the money from the fund they had set aside for our wedding, now that they were in need. They had already used more than half of the wedding fund for Allison's wedding, and whatever was left they spent on a trip to Europe. This left them with little savings, explaining why they couldn't cover their own expenses. So that mystery was solved. My uncle may have intended to make me feel guilty, but instead I felt relieved that I hadn't contributed my hard-earned money to my parents' bills. Their irresponsible spending was their own doing, not mine. Their lack of insurance due to their delusional beliefs wasn't my responsibility either. They could turn to their relatives for help or fend for themselves. I wasn't giving them anything. They were no longer entitled to my time or my money. Update 3. Something really strange happened today, and I need to talk about it. I haven't been able to confide in my friends because most of them don't know much about my family history, and I'm not ready to share it with them yet. So I'm turning to Reddit for support. It's been almost 2 weeks since I last spoke to my parents. A few hours ago in the evening, Allison unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep. I was taken aback by her sudden visit, especially because I didn't think she knew where I lived. It turns out one of our old high school friends disclosed the neighborhood I lived in, and Allison went to great lengths to locate me, which was surprising given our strained relationship. She also looks and acts very differently from what I remembered. She's become more refined and sophisticated, I think, and that's been a huge difference because earlier she used to talk like she was still in high school, but now she sounds more laddie-like somehow and even behaves better. Her way of dressing has changed, the jewelry she wears has changed, and even her makeup. It actually felt like I wasn't even talking to Allison today. Everything about her is aged all of a sudden, but one thing that hasn't changed is how she is a person. I guess you cannot put makeup on your heart and tell people to call it Mrs. Davis, like she did with herself. Her personality and beliefs haven't undergone any renovation for sure. I let her in after she knocked at my door, and I was really surprised to see her, but I was also curious to know why she'd come by, so I decided to talk to her. After some small talk about her life, where she told me everything that she'd been up to unprompted and bragged about how fabulous her life was as a stay-at-home mom of 2 toddlers married to a wealthy guy without anything to worry about except for her cuticles, I waited for her to get to the point while politely nodding at her boring speech about how wonderfully underrated being a traditional housewife was. She was even advising me to do the same, so I really couldn't wait for her to finish talking about irrelevant things and get to the damn point, which she did after about 15 minutes of talking about her life. She explained that she had returned on her own initiative because our parents had been pleading for her to visit them after the accident. They didn't ask for her financial assistance, but simply wanted her presence. After 2 weeks, she finally decided to come back and thought it was also an opportunity to reconcile with me. However, things took a turn when she began venting about our parents' neediness and how they were disrespecting her new family. She complained about having to leave her two children with their nanny just to visit them, expressing frustration at being forced to choose between her parents and her own kids. I couldn't comprehend why she kept referring to her stepchildren as her own. She divulged a lot about her marriage and her husband, unsolicited. From what I gathered, it seemed like her husband had only married her to improve his chances of gaining partial custody of his children, which he successfully achieved. She believed he genuinely cared for her. He had been embroiled in a custody battle for some time, being a busy businessman unable to dedicate enough time to his children. His ex-wife used this against him until he announced his engagement, signaling stability, which swayed the court in his favor. Allison proudly recounted how she had stepped in to save these children, but to me, it seemed like her husband had manipulated her. Their relationship had barely lasted a year before he proposed, indicating that his motives might not have been purely romantic. It's unlikely that genuine love blossoms so quickly, especially after a divorce. Perhaps Allison was oblivious to this or chose to overlook it for financial security, content with being a glorified nanny to her husband's children. Furthermore, she resented her own parents for expecting her presence after their serious accident, feeling it encroached on her time with her new family. Her new family, however, comprised a husband who may not have held much affection for her and two unrelated children who were just as content with their nanny as they were with her. If there ever was a picture-perfect definition of ungratefulness, it would be embodied by Allison. Though I'm no champion of my parents, hearing her complain about their alleged neediness left me astounded. It was hard to believe that this was the same girl they had favored repeatedly over me. Eventually, she got to the purpose of her visit and informed me she would depart in 2 days. Despite promising our parents she would stay for a month, she felt exhausted from their repetitive recounting of the accident and their ordeal, claiming she needed to return home soon. Now, she expected me to reconcile with our parents and essentially take her place, relieving her of the guilt of abandoning them in their time of need. Unaware that our parents had severed ties with me once again due to my refusal to cover their expenses, she likely assumed they hadn't mentioned it to her, as they rarely talk about me. She sought sympathy from me for having to deal with our parents and leaving her own family behind. Her plan was to leverage this sympathy to manipulate me into becoming our parents' emotional support, as she didn't feel capable of fulfilling that role herself. It was a classic tactic of Allison's, but I saw through it and refused to play along. I had no intention of revealing this to her during her stay at my house, knowing it would lead to conflict. Instead, I gave her a vague assurance that I would try to reconcile, though I knew I had no intention of doing so. She left after urging me to stay in touch, though we both knew she didn't mean it. Frankly, I was relieved to see her go. Not only was she a self-centered and manipulative individual, but she was also dreadfully dull to converse with. Her monotonous tales of life in California left little room for meaningful dialogue. Her life seems to revolve around parties, her stepchildren, and her husband. While she believes she's living the dream, I find it rather pitiful. It's evident that her husband's affection is lacking, and with her stepchildren spending significant time with their biological mother, it's likely they'll always favor her. Yet this is the path she has chosen, and as for me, I'm determined to create a life far removed from my family. Today reaffirmed my decision to distance myself from my parents and sister. They're selfish and callous, with little regard for anyone but themselves, especially Allison. It's disheartening to be associated with such individuals. However, I finally cut ties with all of them, blocking their contacts to ensure my peace of mind. I hope they respect my boundaries and refrain from contacting me in the future. I'm better off without them, and I pray it stays that way.
I never wanted to be a doctor. That might sound ungrateful. After all, medicine is a noble profession, one that many dream of pursuing. But for me, it was a gilded cage, a path chosen by my parents that slowly suffocated my true passion. My name is Sophia Chin, and I've been living a double life for the past 6 years. To my parents, I'm Dr. Chin, the dutiful daughter who followed the path they paved. To the art world, I'm a Warrenite, one of the most sought-after contemporary artists in New York, known for paintings that sell for millions. And neither world knows about the other. The irony of my situation hit me hardest this morning as I stood in the newly renovated wing of Metropolitan General Hospital, my parents' pride and joy. They've both been prominent surgeons here for 30 years. The hospital was unveiling its new Healing Through Art initiative. And there, taking center stage in the main lobby, was my latest piece. A massive canvas exploding with colors, abstract yet somehow alive, purchased anonymously through my gallery for $2 million. My mother stood beside me, critiquing it with her surgical precision. "I don't understand modern art," she said, wrinkling her nose. $2 million for splashes of paint. The hospital board must be losing their minds. If only she knew those splashes of paint would pay for an entire year of the hospital's pediatric care program. My father joined us, his white coat pristine, as always. "At least it adds some color to the place," he muttered. Though I would have preferred they spend the money on new equipment. I bit my tongue, remembering the night I created that painting. I had just finished a 36-hour shift at the hospital, their hospital, and instead of sleeping, I'd gone straight to my secret studio. The emotions poured out of me onto the canvas. The exhaustion, the frustration, the constant pressure to be someone I wasn't. But my story really begins 10 years ago, when I was 18 and dared to dream of attending art school. Absolutely not. My father's voice had thundered through our house, making the fine china in the display cabinet tremble. "No daughter of mine will waste her life painting pictures." I stood in our living room, acceptance letter from the prestigious Art Institute clutched in my shaking hands. The same hands that had secretly won 3 national youth art competitions under a pseudonym. The same hands my parents wanted to train for holding scalpels instead of paintbrushes. "But Dad, I got a full scholarship. They say I'm one of the most promising young artists they've seen in years." My voice sounded small, even to me. My mother sat perfectly straight on our leather sofa, her expression a carefully constructed mask of disappointment. "Sophia, we've invested everything in preparing you for medical school. The extra classes, the summer programs, the MCAT prep courses. This isn't up for discussion." I never asked for those things, I protested, feeling the familiar pressure building behind my eyes. "I never wanted." "Enough." My father cut me off. "You think art will give you a stable future? You think you can support yourself drawing pictures? Look at your cousin William. He tried to be a creative. Now he's 35 and still living in his parents' basement." "But I'm good at it," I whispered. "Really good." My mother stood up, straightening her already impeccable blouse. "You're good at science too. Top of your class in biology. Perfect MCAT scores. That's not an accident, Sophia. That's your true calling." I wanted to tell them about the paintings I'd sold online, about the gallery owner who'd seen my work and offered to represent me, about the fire that burned inside me every time I picked up a brush. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In their world, success had only one definition, and it wore a white coat. The acceptance letter crumpled in my fist. I had a choice to make: defy my parents and potentially lose my family, or find another way. That night, I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I wrote to the Art Institute declining their offer, and I accepted my place at my parents' alma mater, Preston Medical School. But I also sent an email to that gallery owner, under my new pseudonym, Aurora Knight. "I'll need to work in absolute secrecy," I wrote. "No public appearances, no photos, no interviews, but I'll keep painting." His response came within hours. Intriguing. Mystery can be a powerful marketing tool. Send me your next piece, and we'll begin. And so began my double life. By day, I threw myself into medical school, learning about human anatomy with the same precision I used to study color theory. By night, in a small studio apartment I rented under my alias, I created art that began to catch the attention of collectors worldwide. The first year was the hardest. Medical school was as demanding as my parents had promised, and there were nights I thought I would break under the pressure. But somehow, the exhaustion and stress only fueled my art. My paintings became more intense, more emotional. Critics called them raw, visceral, almost surgical in their precision. If they only knew. My first major sale came during my second year of medical school, a triptych that sold for $180,000. I celebrated alone in my studio, dancing silently among my canvases, knowing I couldn't tell a soul. My parents called that same night, proud that I'd aced another pathology exam. I let them talk, wondering what they'd say if they knew their dedicated medical student daughter had just been hailed as the most exciting new voice in contemporary art. The next few years followed the same pattern. I excelled in my medical studies, earning the praise and approval my parents had always craved. But in the art world, Aurora Night became a sensation. My paintings sold for increasingly higher prices, and the mystery surrounding my identity only added to their allure. Collectors loved the story. The anonymous artist whose work seemed to capture the very essence of human emotion. "Your technique is remarkable," a prominent critic wrote. "There's something almost clinical in your understanding of human nature, yet your expression of it is pure poetry." I had to laugh at that. If he only knew how many hours I spent studying actual human anatomy. By the time I graduated medical school, I had earned enough from my art to buy a small private island. Not that I could ever tell my parents that. Instead, I dutifully accepted a residency position at their hospital, Metropolitan General, while maintaining my secret studio across town. The balancing act was exhausting, but something unexpected happened. I discovered that being a doctor made me a better artist, and being an artist made me a better doctor. My understanding of human anatomy brought a unique perspective to my paintings, while my artistic sensitivity helped me connect with patients in ways my colleagues couldn't quite match. But every time my parents bragged about their doctor daughter, every time they reminded me how right they had been to push me into medicine, I thought about the paintings selling for millions under a name they'd never know. Until this morning, when they stood in their own hospital, unknowingly criticizing their daughter's artwork worth millions. The same artwork that would fund the pediatric care program they've been fighting to expand for years. And that's when I realized, maybe it was finally time for Aurora Night to step into the light. But I never expected what would happen next. The decision to reveal my identity wasn't made in a moment. It built slowly, like layers of paint on canvas, each small incident adding another stroke to the bigger picture. My father's criticism of the painting in the hospital lobby that morning was just the final layer. What he didn't know was that I had another piece being unveiled that same evening at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Standing in the hospital's sterile hallway, still in my white coat, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus, my gallery owner. A text message flashed across the screen. "Major problem with tonight's unveiling. Need to speak ASAP." I ducked into an empty consultation room, my heart racing. "Marcus, what's wrong?" His voice crackled through the speaker, tense with worry. "The Times is running a piece on Aurora Night. Someone talked. They're claiming they know your real identity." My blood ran cold. That's impossible. Only you know. It wasn't me, he cut in. But someone at the hospital connected the dots. They've noticed you're never on shift during Aurora Night's major shows. They've linked the anatomical precision in your work to medical training. They're running the story tonight, right before the Met unveiling. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly weak. 6 years of careful secrecy, about to unravel because I'd been careless with my shift scheduling. Can we stop it? I whispered. Not unless you want to confirm or deny on record. They're giving us 1 hour to comment. Through the consultation room window, I could see my parents in the distance, doing their rounds together as they had for 30 years. They looked so confident, so certain of their world and their place in it. I'll call you back, I told Marcus. I had spent years maintaining this divide, the dedicated doctor-daughter and the mysterious millionaire artist. But trying to keep these worlds separate had become like trying to keep oil and water from mixing by sheer force of will. Exhausting. Impossible. My pager buzzed. Emergency in the pediatric ward. As I rushed down the corridor, my mind raced through the implications. If the story broke, everyone would know. My colleagues, my patients, my parents. The emergency turned out to be an allergic reaction, scary but treatable. As I calmed the frightened child with an epinephrine shot, I noticed the walls of the pediatric ward. They were stark white, institutional, nothing like the vibrant painting now hanging in the lobby. Doctor, the child's mother touched my arm. Thank you. He was so scared, but you made him feel safe. I looked at the little boy, now breathing normally, clutching his stuffed elephant. In that moment, I realized something. I was good at this, not because my parents had forced me into medicine, but because I brought my whole self to it, including the artist they tried to suppress. I stepped out of the room and called Marcus back. Don't fight the story, I said firmly. In fact, I'll give them something better. Tell them Aurora Night will be attending tonight's unveiling in person, for the first time ever. Silence on the other end. Then, are you sure? This changes everything. Everything's already changing. Might as well do it on my terms. I hung up and did something I'd never done before. I requested an emergency evening off. My supervisor was surprised. I was known for never asking for schedule changes, but agreed given my outstanding record. Then I called my parents' office. Mom, Dad, I need you to come to the Metropolitan Museum of Art tonight. There's something you need to see. The museum? My mother sounded confused. Sophia, we have dinner plans with the hospital board. Please, I cut in. This is important. More important than dinner plans. Maybe it was something in my voice, but after a pause, my father said, What time? At home. I opened the secret closet where I kept my Aurora Night persona. Unlike my practical doctor's wardrobe, these clothes were all artistic expression. Carefully curated pieces that made statements without saying a word. I chose a hand-painted silk dress, one of my own creations, each brush stroke telling part of my story. As I dressed, I thought about the painting being unveiled tonight. It was different from my others, more personal, more revealing. I had titled it Daughter of Medicine, and into it I had poured all the complexity of my double life. The central figure was a woman in a white coat, but her shadow on the wall was an artist at an easel. Medical instruments morphed into paintbrushes, hospital corridors bloomed with color, and throughout it all ran the steady rhythm of a heartbeat monitor, rendered in gold leaf. I had created it during a week of night shifts in the ICU, each layer added during stolen moments between rounds, the paint sometimes mixing with my tears of exhaustion. It was both confession and declaration, and tonight it would sell for $3.5 million if the sale still went through after my revelation. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. The Times agreed to hold the story until after the unveiling. But social media is already buzzing with speculation. You're trending. I looked at myself in the mirror. The elegant artist's dress, my hospital ID, still clipped to my bag out of habit. For the first time in years, I felt whole, undivided. Good, I said. Let them talk. The museum was already crowded when I arrived. The unveiling was the social event of the season, made even more exciting by rumors that the mysterious Aurora Night might actually appear. I spotted my parents near the entrance, looking uncomfortable and out of place in their business attire. They hadn't seen me yet. Behind them, under a velvet drape, waited my painting, my truth. In less than an hour, everything would change. Marcus appeared at my elbow, looking nervous. The press is here in force. Last chance to back out. I shook my head. Not this time. The museum director approached the podium, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this historic evening. I began moving through the crowd toward my parents, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Years of hospital emergencies had taught me how to stay calm in a crisis. The director was still speaking, and we are honored to announce that tonight, after 6 years of mystery, the artist known as Aurora Night. I reached my parents just as the velvet drape began to fall. Mom, Dad, I said softly, there's something I need to tell you. They turned, their eyes widening as they took in my appearance. So different from their proper doctor-daughter. Behind them, the painting was now fully revealed, and gasps rippled through the crowd. I'm Aurora Night. The words hung in the air between us as camera flashes exploded around us. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw clenched. And in their eyes, I saw something I had never seen before, complete and utter shock. But before they could respond, before they could process this revelation, something happened that none of us expected. Something that would turn this already momentous evening into a night that would change not just my life, but the entire art world forever. The silence lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. Then chaos erupted. Camera flashes exploded around us like strobe lights. Reporters shouted questions. The crowd surged forward, everyone trying to get closer to the newly revealed Aurora Night. But I couldn't look away from my parents' faces. My mother's perfectly maintained composure cracked first. This is impossible, she whispered. You're a doctor. I'm both, I said quietly, even as the crowd pressed closer. I've always been both. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. James Morrison, head of the hospital board, pushed through the crowd. His face was flushed with excitement. The painting in the hospital lobby, he blurted out. The one we just unveiled this morning. That was you. I nodded. His next words changed everything. We have to pull out of the purchase. We can't possibly accept a $2 million donation from one of our own residents. The reporters went wild. Headlines were already forming. Dr. Artist secretly donates millions to own hospital. But my father's voice cut through the chaos. Donation? He turned to Dr. Morrison. What donation? Dr. Morrison looked confused. The purchase price of the lobby painting. It was returned to the hospital as an anonymous donation, earmarked for the pediatric care program. We thought some wealthy benefactor. His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. My father turned back to me, his face unreadable. How many other paintings? How much? 38 major pieces. Marcus stepped in, ever the efficient gallery owner. Total sales approaching $40 million. Aurora Knight is the most successful artist under 40 in the contemporary art world. My mother swayed slightly. Nearby, a senior art critic was practically dancing with glee. The precision in her work, it all makes sense now. She brings a surgeon's eye to her art. Actually, I corrected him gently, I bring an artist's heart to my medicine. That's when the second surprise of the evening arrived. Dr. Sarah Chen, my chief resident, pushed forward. Her eyes were shining with unshed tears. The Williams case, she said. That impossible diagnosis you made last month. You said you noticed a pattern. I knew exactly what she meant. A young patient had presented with seemingly unrelated symptoms. While other doctors focused on test results, I had noticed something in the distribution of his symptoms that reminded me of a color theory principle. Complementary patterns that revealed a hidden hole. You see things differently, Dr. Chen continued. That's why your diagnostic rate is so high. You're not just looking at symptoms. You're seeing patterns like an artist, my mother finished softly. For the first time since my revelation, I saw something shift in her expression. The shock was still there, but something else too, a glimmer of understanding. My father remained silent, his surgeon's hands clasped tightly behind his back. I knew that pose. He was trying to maintain control, to process everything with clinical detachment. The museum director was desperately trying to restore order, to proceed with the official unveiling of Daughter of Medicine. But I barely heard him. My focus was entirely on my father as he slowly walked toward my painting. He stood before it, this man who had never wanted his daughter to be an artist, studying every detail with the same intensity he brought to examining X-rays. I held my breath. The anatomy, he said finally, his voice rough. Every muscle, every proportion, it's perfect. Yes, I said, moving to stand beside him. Because I learned it from you. He turned to me, and I saw tears in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. All these years, he whispered, we thought we were teaching you to be a doctor, but you were learning to be something more. My mother joined us, her hand finding mine. The painting in the hospital, she said. You didn't just donate the money. You chose that spot in the lobby because it's where you both stop every morning, I finished. I wanted to bring some beauty to your daily routine, even if you didn't know it was from me. The cameras were still flashing, reporters still shouting questions, but in that moment, it was just us, a family seeing each other clearly for the first time. Marcus approached cautiously. Sophia, the buyers are waiting. The bidding for Daughter of Medicine has already exceeded the asking price. They want to know if you'll still sell. Now that? No, my father interrupted, surprising us all. He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying with the authority of 30 years in surgery. This painting belongs in the hospital, next to the other one, where everyone can see what happens when you don't force someone to choose between two halves of themselves. Dad, I started to protest. It's worth millions. He smiled, and it was a smile I'd never seen before. Part pride, part regret, part wonder. So is my daughter. The story exploded overnight, of course. Doctor by day, millionaire artist by night, became a global sensation. The art world was fascinated by how medical training influenced my work. The medical community was intrigued by how artistic perception could enhance diagnostic skills. The hospital created a new program, integrating art therapy into patient care, with me as the director. My paintings now hang in both galleries and hospitals, bridging the worlds I once thought had to remain separate. My parents? They're still adjusting. Sometimes I catch them looking at me like they're seeing a stranger. But more often, they're looking at my work, both medical and artistic, with new eyes. Last week, I found my father in front of the lobby painting, studying it during his morning rounds. "I was wrong," he said without turning around. "When I told you that art wasn't a real career, I was trying to protect you from struggle, but instead, I almost prevented you from becoming who you were meant to be." I stood beside him, both of us in our white coats, looking at the swirls of color that had helped heal not just the hospital's finances, but our family's wounds. "You didn't prevent anything," I told him. "You taught me precision, dedication, and the importance of understanding human nature. I just applied those lessons to a larger canvas than you expected." He laughed, a real laugh, free from the weight of expectations. "Your mother's talking about taking art classes, you know. Says she wants to understand your world better." "It was always the same world," I said softly. "I just needed everyone else to see it." Now, when people ask me if I'm a doctor or an artist, I smile and tell them the truth. I'm someone who refuses to be defined by other people's limitations. My art heals in one way, my medicine in another, but both come from the same place. A desire to make the world a little more beautiful, a little more whole. And my parents, they finally understand that success doesn't always wear a white coat. Sometimes it comes covered in paint. The plaque beneath the painting in the hospital lobby now bears both my names, Dr. Sophia Chen and Aurora Knight, a reminder that we are all, perhaps, more than the labels others give us. We just need the courage to show our true colors. And somewhere, in my studio that's no longer secret, a new canvas waits. Because this isn't the end of my story. It's just the first time I'm signing it with my real name. The day I discovered my sister had lost our parents' entire retirement fund, I was sitting in my office overlooking the Seattle skyline. The news didn't come from my family. They'd never tell me something this important. Instead, it came from Marcus, my financial advisor, who had noticed unusual activity in my parents' investment accounts. "Sarah, your parents' retirement fund has been completely drained," Marcus said, his voice grave through the phone. "Every penny was transferred to a series of high-risk investments under your sister's management. They've lost everything." I gripped my desk, knuckles turning white. "How much?" $2.8 million. Gone in less than 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. I thought about my parents, both in their 60s, about to retire after working their whole lives. And Madison, my perfect older sister, the financial genius they trusted with everything. "Send me the details," I said, ending the call. I stared at the Seattle rain pattering against my office window, remembering how different things had been just 15 years ago. Back then, I was the family disappointment, the daughter who chose to study engineering instead of finance, who turned down a position at my father's firm to start my own tech company. Engineering is for people who can't handle real business, Madison had said at one family dinner, earning approving laughs from our parents. "While you're playing with computers, I'll be managing million-dollar portfolios." She'd kept her word about the million-dollar portfolios. She just hadn't mentioned they'd be our parents' life savings. My phone buzzed. Marcus had sent the financial records. With each page I scrolled through, My heart sank further. Madison had convinced our parents to give her complete control of their retirement fund, promising returns that would double their money. Instead, she dumped everything into a cryptocurrency scheme that had collapsed spectacularly. I pulled up my own company's financials. Advanced Dynamics, the tech firm I'd built from scratch, was now worth over $300 million. I could easily help my parents, if they'd let me. I dialed my mother's number, something I rarely did anymore. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice tight with forced cheerfulness. "Sarah? This is unexpected. Mom, I know about the retirement fund." Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. "That's none of your business," she finally said. "Madison is handling it." I bit back a bitter laugh. Handling it? She lost everything. She made some unfortunate investments, but she's working on fixing it. Besides, how do you even know about this? Because unlike Madison, I actually pay attention to financial markets. "Mom, let me help. I can." "We don't need your help," she cut me off sharply. "Madison has a plan. She's always been good with money, unlike—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Unlike you," hung in the air between us. "Mom? I have to go. Please don't mention this to anyone. Madison says she can recover the funds if we just give her time." The line went dead. I sat back in my chair, remembering all the times they'd chosen Madison over me. When I got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, they skipped my acceptance ceremony to attend Madison's small banking award dinner. When I launched my company, they dismissed it as a cute little startup. Meanwhile, they'd bragged about Madison's every promotion, every bonus, every minor achievement. Now she had lost their entire future, and they still trusted her more than me. My office door opened and Lisa, my executive assistant, walked in with concern etched on her face. "Everything okay?" I heard raised voices. I shook my head. My sister lost my parents' retirement fund. All of it. Lisa winced. She'd been with me since the early days of Advanced Dynamics and knew my family history well. "Let me guess, they still think she can fix it?" "Of course they do. She's Madison. She can do no wrong." Lisa sat down across from me. "What are you going to do?" I turned to my computer, pulling up property records. My parents' house, my childhood home, was mortgage-free and worth about $1.2 million. If they sold it, they could at least have something for retirement. "They'll never sell," Lisa said, reading my thoughts. "That house is your father's pride and joy. They might not have a choice." I opened another window, accessing my parents' property tax records. They haven't paid property taxes in 3 months. They're going to lose the house anyway. I made some quick calculations. With their depleted savings and my father's reduced income, he'd recently stepped back to part-time work in preparation for retirement. They couldn't afford the mounting tax bills. The house would go to auction within months. "I'm buying it," I said suddenly, anonymously, through one of our shell companies. "They'll never know it's me." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "And then what?" "Then I'll let them stay there. Pay the taxes, maintain the property. They can live out their retirement in peace, while Madison takes the credit for saving them again." I smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Probably, but at least they'll be okay." As I started making arrangements, my phone lit up with a text from Madison. "Stay out of this, little sister. I know you've been asking questions. This is family business, and you're barely family anymore." I stared at the message, feeling that familiar ache of exclusion. Then I straightened my shoulders, and began typing emails to my lawyers. Madison might be the golden child, but I had something better than their approval. I had the means to actually help them, even if they never knew it was me. 3 months passed in a blur of legal preparations and careful maneuvering. Through discreet channels, I tracked my parents' financial spiral. Madison kept making promises, each more grandiose than the last. I found new investors, she'd tell them. Just 2 more weeks. But the weeks turned into months, and their savings remained gone. The auction notice arrived on a rainy Tuesday morning. I didn't receive it directly, of course, but my lawyer forwarded me a copy. The Morrison family residence, all 4,200 square feet of my childhood home, would be sold to the highest bidder in exactly 1 month. I was in a board meeting when my mother finally called. "Sarah?" Her voice wavered, nothing like her usual confident tone. "Are you busy?" I stepped out of the conference room, signaling to my executives to continue without me. "What's wrong?" A pause, then a shaky breath. "The house? We're losing the house." Madison tried everything, but she broke off, and I heard muffled crying. "Mom, I can help. Let me." "No." She cut me off, steel returning to her voice. "That's not why I'm calling. Madison says she might have a solution, but we need a small loan. Just $50,000 to tide us over until her new investment pays off." I closed my eyes, fighting back frustration. Even now, they were turning to Madison's schemes, rather than accepting my help directly. "Mom, her investments aren't real. She's lying to you." "How dare you?" My mother's voice turned sharp. "Your sister is trying to save our home while you've done nothing but criticize. If you won't help with a loan, I don't know why I bothered calling." The line went dead. I stood in the hallway, my reflection in the window showing a woman I'd barely recognized. Gone was the unsure youngest daughter they dismissed. In her place stood the CEO of a major tech company, someone who'd built something real while Madison built castles in the air. That evening, I met with James Chen, my most trusted lawyer, in my home office. "Everything's set," he said, spreading papers across my desk. "Horizon Ventures LLC is officially registered. No connection to you or Advanced Dynamics can be traced." Horizon Ventures was my shell company, created specifically to buy my parents' house. On paper, it was owned by a series of other shell companies, leading to a dead end in the Cayman Islands. "The auction is in 4 weeks," James continued. "Given the market and the distressed nature of the sale, we expect the bidding to start around $800,000. I nodded, pulling up my own research. There will be other bidders. That neighborhood is prime real estate now. We're prepared to go up to $2 million if necessary, though that's well above market value. I don't care about market value. I care about making sure they have a home." The next few weeks were tense. Madison made increasingly desperate attempts to raise money, even trying to convince our parents to take out high-interest loans from dubious lenders. I blocked those attempts through careful behind-the-scenes maneuvering, knowing they'd lead to even more financial disaster. The day before the auction, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. My father stood in the reception area, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Sarah," he said quietly, "do you have a minute?" I led into my office, noticing how his eyes widened at the view, the expensive furniture, the clear signs of success he'd never acknowledged. "Nice place," he said, settling into a chair. "You've done well for yourself. What do you need, Dad?" He flinched at my direct tone. Madison says you've been interfering with her attempts to help us, blocking loans, scaring away investors. Why would you do that to your own family? I stared at him, incredulous. Those weren't investors, Dad. They were predatory lenders who would have taken what little you have left. Madison knows what she's doing. She's always been good with money. She lost your entire retirement fund. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Every penny you saved, gone on cryptocurrency scams and fake investment schemes. When will you see her for what she is? My father stood up, his face flushing. I don't know why we expected you to understand. You've always been jealous of your sister's financial acumen. Well, we don't need your help or your approval. Madison will figure something out. She always does. He stormed out, leaving me alone in my office. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching him get into his luxury car, probably the last remnant of their comfortable life, and soon to be repossessed too. The next morning, I dressed carefully in a plain black pantsuit, nothing like my usual designer office wear. I wore minimal makeup, pulled my hair back severely, and added glasses I didn't need. The woman in the mirror looked nothing like Sarah Morrison, CEO of Advanced Dynamics. The auction was held in a small room at the county courthouse. I sat in the back, a plain manila envelope containing Horizon Ventures documentation on my lap. My parents sat in the front row, Madison beside them, whispering what looked like reassurances. She was dressed expensively as always, keeping up appearances even as everything crumbled. Next item, the auctioneer announced, property at 1447 Maple Grove Road. Opening bid $800,000. A few hands went up. Real estate developers mostly, judging by their sharp suits and calculating expressions. The price climbed steadily. 900,000. 950,000. 1 million. Madison kept glancing around frantically. I wondered what last-minute rescue she had promised our parents. 1.2 million, called a developer in the front. My mother's shoulders began to shake. My father put his arm around her, his face ashen. 1.5 million, I said clearly, raising my hand. The other bidders turned to look at me, this plain woman in the back row. 1.6, countered the developer. 1.8, I responded immediately. The room grew quiet. The developer frowned, consulting with his colleague. 1.9 million, he said finally. I didn't hesitate. 2 million. A murmur ran through the room. Even the auctioneer looked surprised. This was well over market value. 2 million going once, going twice. Madison suddenly jumped up. Wait, I have investors on the phone right now. They just need 10 more minutes. Sold. The auctioneer's gavel came down firmly, to Horizon Ventures LLC. I watched my family's faces as I walked to the front to complete the paperwork. None of them gave me a second glance. I was just another faceless buyer taking their home. Madison was still arguing with the auctioneer, waving her phone around uselessly. As I signed the final documents, I heard my mother's quiet sobs. Soon they would receive notice from Horizon Ventures, offering them a lifetime lease at a nominal rate. They would never know their mysterious benefactor was the daughter they dismissed for so long. Or so I thought. I should have known Madison wouldn't let it end there. My sister had always been relentless when her pride was at stake, and losing our parents' house had wounded that pride deeply. A week after the auction, as I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports, Lisa rushed in without knocking. "Your sister is here," she said, breathless. "With your parents." And, before she could finish, Madison burst through the door, our parents trailing behind her. In her hand, she clutched a stack of papers. "I knew it," she snarled, throwing the papers onto my desk. "Horizon Ventures. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out?" I remained seated, keeping my expression neutral. "Hello, Madison. Mom, Dad. This is unexpected." My mother stepped forward, her eyes darting around my office. "Sarah, what is your sister talking about?" Madison laughed sharply. "Our little sister here is the mysterious buyer. She bought our family home just to humiliate us." I finally stood, straightening papers on my desk with deliberate calm. "And how exactly did you come to that conclusion?" "I traced the ownership," Madison said triumphantly. "Through all your shell companies. It took time, but I found the connection to Advanced Dynamics." I raised an eyebrow. "Did you? Show me." Her confidence wavered slightly. The ownership trail I'd created was bulletproof. She couldn't have traced it. She was bluffing, hoping I'd reveal something. "It doesn't matter how I know," she backpedaled. "What matters is you're trying to make us homeless." Actually, I picked up the stack of papers she'd thrown. "According to this lease agreement from Horizon Ventures, you're being offered a lifetime residence at $100 per month. Hardly homeless." My father stepped forward, his face red. "So you admit you bought our house?" I met his gaze steadily. "Would it matter if I did? You've already decided I'm the villain here." "Because you are," Madison shouted. "I was handling things. I had investors lined up." "You've had nothing." I cut her off, my voice sharp. "No investors, no plans. Nothing but more lies to cover up what you did. You lost their retirement fund, Madison. Every penny they saved." My mother gasped. "Sarah, how dare you speak to your sister that way? She's been working tirelessly." "Has she?" I turned to my computer, pulling up documents on my dual monitors. "Shall we look at exactly what she's been doing?" With a few keystrokes, I displayed the trail of their lost retirement fund. The transfers, the failed investments, the cryptocurrency scams. "Here's where she moved the first million into BitConnect." I pointed to the screen. "A known Ponzi scheme that collapsed 2 months later. And here's another $500,000 into a fake NFT project. The rest went to various high-yield investment programs, all scams." My parents stared at the screens, their faces draining of color. That's not," Madison stammered. "Not what? Not true?" I pulled up more documents. "Here are your emails to the scammers. Your desperate messages when things started falling apart." Should I continue? The room fell silent except for my mother's shaky breathing. "Why are you doing this?" Madison whispered, her carefully constructed facade cracking. "Because someone has to tell the truth," I said quietly. "Someone has to clean up your mess." My father found his voice. If you bought the house, why not just tell us?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Would you have accepted my help? You've spent my entire life believing Madison was the financial genius while I was just playing with computers. Even after I built this company, even after everything I achieved, you still trusted her more." "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "Really?" I turned to her. "When I called to offer help, what did you say?" "That Madison had a plan. Madison would fix everything. Madison, Madison, Madison." I stood up, walking to the window. The Seattle skyline stretched before us, a testament to what I'd built while they weren't watching. "Do you know what Advanced Dynamics is worth now? Over $300 million. I could have replaced their retirement fund 10 times over. But you never asked." You never even wondered how I was doing." Madison stepped forward, her voice taking on a wheedling tone I knew too well. "Well, we're asking now, Sarah. If you have that kind of money, surely you can." "No." The word cut through the air like a knife. "I bought the house because I couldn't bear to see our parents homeless. They'll have a place to live, with reasonable rent they can afford on Social Security. But I'm not giving you any money to gamble away, Madison." "We're family," she pleaded. "Family?" I turned back to face them. "Family trusts each other. Family believes in each other. When was the last time any of you believed in me?" Silence answered my question. "The lease agreement is fair," I continued. "The house will be maintained, taxes paid, utilities covered. But there are conditions." I pulled out a document from my desk. "Madison cannot live there. She cannot manage any aspect of our parents' finances. And if she attempts any more investment schemes, the lease will be terminated immediately." "You can't do this," Madison protested. "I can, and I am." I handed the document to my father. "Those are the terms. Take them or leave them." My father read through the papers, his hands trembling slightly. My mother peered over his shoulder, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "I've also arranged for a financial advisor," I added, "a legitimate one, who will help you budget your Social Security and pension income. You'll be able to live comfortably, if modestly." Madison made one last attempt. "Mom, Dad, you can't seriously be considering this. She's trying to control you." My mother looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "No, Madison, you did that. We let you do that." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. "Sarah, we don't," I said softly. "I don't want apologies. I just want you to be okay." My father signed the lease with a shaking hand. Madison stormed out, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. As my parents prepared to leave, my father paused at the door. "Your company, $300 million? I nodded. "And all this time, we never—" "No," I said, "you never did." After they left, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the sun set over Seattle. Lisa brought me a coffee and sat quietly beside me. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. I thought about the years of dismissal, of being the family disappointment. I thought about Madison's schemes, and my parents' blind faith in her. I thought about the moment they finally saw the truth. "You know what's funny?" I said, sipping my coffee. "All I ever wanted was for them to believe in me. Now they do, but it doesn't matter anymore. I stopped needing their approval somewhere along the way." Lisa smiled. "That's called growing up." Maybe. I turned back to my computer, pulling up project reports. Or maybe it's just learning to believe in yourself when no one else will. Months passed. My parents adjusted to their new life, living modestly but securely in their home. Madison moved to Los Angeles, chasing new schemes that no longer threatened our parents' future. And me. I continued building my company, expanding into new markets, achieving things that would have once desperately craved their recognition for. But I no longer needed their approval. I had something better. I had proven myself right. The family disappointment had become the family savior, even if they'd never see it quite that way. Sometimes, success is its own revenge. The day of my parents' reading dawned bright and cold, sunlight streaming through the mahogany-paneled windows of Wilson and Associates Law Office. I sat quietly in the corner, watching my brother Marcus strut around the room in his tailored suit, already acting like he owned everything in sight. Which, if I was being honest with myself, He probably did. Ms. Sarah Bennett? The lawyer's voice cut through my thoughts. Are you ready to proceed? I nodded, gripping the arms of my leather chair. At 32, I was about to find out what my parents really thought of me, though I already had a pretty good idea. The constant comparisons to Marcus throughout our lives had made that painfully clear. Mr. Wilson adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and began reading. To our son Marcus, for his unfailing dedication to the family business and maintaining the Bennett legacy. He went on to list assets that made my head spin. The family estate in Vermont, our summer house in the Hamptons, controlling shares in Bennett Industries, and a portfolio worth millions. Marcus's smirk grew with each item. Then came my part. To our daughter Sarah. Mr. Wilson paused, shuffling his papers. We leave the painting Autumn Twilight, currently hanging in the study of our main residence. The room fell silent. Marcus didn't even try to hide his laughter. A painting? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Just a painting? It was your mother's favorite. Mr. Wilson offered weakly, clearly uncomfortable with the disparity. Marcus walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip just tight enough to hurt. Don't worry, sis. I'll make sure you get a good job in the company. Maybe in the mailroom? I shrugged off his hand and stood up. The Bennett family fortune, built over 3 generations, now belonged entirely to my brother. All I had was a single painting that my mother had bought at some small gallery years ago. I'd always thought it was pretty, a forest scene at dusk, with strange geometric shapes hidden among the trees, but it wasn't exactly a fair inheritance. Is that all? I asked Mr. Wilson. He nodded sympathetically. The painting must be collected within 7 days. I left without another word, ignoring Marcus's calls behind me. The drive to my parents' house, now Marcus's house, felt surreal. The guards at the gate gave me suspicious looks, but let me through when I explained about the painting. Inside, the housekeeper Margaret met me with tears in her eyes. "Oh, Miss Sarah," she whispered, hugging me tight. "It's not right, what they did to you." I hugged her back, fighting my own tears. Margaret had been more like a mother to me than my own mother sometimes. She helped me take down the painting from the study wall, carefully wrapping it in a blanket. "Your mother used to stare at this for hours," Margaret said softly, "especially in the last few months. Sometimes she'd mutter about numbers and patterns. We thought the illness was making her confused." I looked at the painting more closely. In the fading light of the study, the geometric shapes seemed to shift and change, creating patterns I'd never noticed before. "Numbers?" Margaret nodded. She traced the shapes with her fingers, over and over. Mr. Bennett would get so angry about it. That night, in my small apartment across town, I hung the painting on my living room wall. It was beautiful in its own way. The forest scene was painted with incredible detail, each leaf and branch precisely rendered. But those geometric shapes, they didn't quite fit with the natural elements. They seemed almost deliberate, like they were trying to tell me something. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the painting. My mother's final gift to me. Was it really just a cruel joke, a final reminder that I'd never measure up to Marcus? Or was there something more? My phone buzzed. Marcus calling again. I ignored it, like I had his last 5 calls. He probably wanted to gloat more, or maybe offer me that mailroom position. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching the painting. Autumn Twilight, by an artist named James Morrison. No major exhibitions, no auction records, barely any online presence at all. The gallery where my mother bought it had closed years ago. It was like the painting had appeared out of nowhere. A text from Marcus popped up. "Don't be bitter, sis. Come work for me. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted." I snorted. What my parents had wanted was for me to be more like Marcus, to care about profit margins and shareholders instead of pursuing my passion for art history and restoration. I disappointed them by choosing my own path, and now they'd made their feelings crystal clear. But something about the painting kept drawing my attention. Those shapes, they reminded me of something I'd studied in my art restoration courses. Steganography, the practice of hiding messages in plain sight. I got up and examined the painting more closely. The geometric shapes were subtly different colors than the rest of the scene, barely noticeable, unless you were looking for it. And they seemed to form a pattern. A knock at my door made me jump. It was past midnight. Who would be visiting at this hour? Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing there, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Sarah," he called out. "Open up. We need to talk about the painting." I stayed silent, watching him through the peephole. He'd never shown any interest in art before. Why was he here now, in the middle of the night, asking about a supposedly worthless painting? "Sarah, please." His voice took on an edge of desperation I'd never heard before. "Mom left instructions about the painting. You need to give it back." Instructions? My heart started pounding. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe there really was something hidden in those geometric shapes. "Go away, Marcus," I called through the door. "The painting is mine. It's all I got, remember?" "You don't understand," he hissed. "That painting, it's not what you think. Give it to me now, and I'll give you $5 million. $5 million? For a painting he'd laughed about just hours ago? I backed away from the door, my mind racing. Marcus was many things, but he wasn't stupid with money. If he was offering that much, the painting must be worth far more. I heard him fumbling with something. Keys? Did he still have a copy of my spare key from when I'd been sick last year? I quickly grabbed the painting off the wall and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me just as I heard my front door open. "Sarah." Marcus's voice echoed through my apartment. "Where are you? Where's the painting?" I held the painting close, my hands shaking. In the dim light of my bedroom, those geometric shapes seemed to glow faintly. And then I saw it, a pattern I'd missed before. The shapes weren't random at all. They formed numbers, hidden so cleverly in the forest scene that you'd never notice unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Sarah." Marcus was getting closer. "Think about what you're doing. That painting is worth more than you can imagine." I turned the painting over, inspecting the back. The original canvas was professionally mounted, but something about the framing felt off. A slight gap that shouldn't be there. My bedroom door handle jiggled. "Sarah, open this door right now." With trembling fingers, I'd pried at the gap in the frame. A small piece of paper fluttered out, covered in my mother's elegant handwriting. As I read the first line, my breath caught in my throat. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, you've discovered what I always knew you would. You see patterns others miss. You question what others accept. And now, my darling girl, you're about to understand why your father and brother have always been so afraid of you." The pounding on my bedroom door grew louder, but I barely heard it. I was too busy reading my mother's letter, my hands shaking as each word revealed a truth that would change everything. The numbers in the painting weren't just random shapes. They were coordinates, accounts, and passwords to something that would shake the very foundation of Bennett Industries. And my brother, still shouting outside my door, had no idea that his perfect world was about to crumble. I don't know how long I sat there on my bedroom floor, reading and rereading my mother's letter, while Marcus continued his tirade outside. My hands trembled as I absorbed each carefully written word. The numbers in the painting, when combined with the access codes I've included here, will lead you to the truth about Bin Industries. Your father and brother built their empire on stolen innovations, patents and designs taken from brilliant minds who trusted them. I was one of those minds, Sarah. And you, my dear daughter, were always meant to be my successor. A loud crash from my living room jolted me back to reality. Marcus had apparently gotten tired of asking nicely. "I'm calling the police," I shouted, already dialing 911. "Go ahead," Marcus yelled back. "I'll tell them you stole company property. That painting belongs to Bennett Industries." But I knew better now. The letter explained everything. How my mother had been a brilliant inventor in her own right. How she hidden her work in plain sight all these years. The painting wasn't just art. It was a key to a hidden database of evidence. "The coordinates will lead you to my private laboratory," the letter continued. "Everything you need is there. But be careful, Sarah. Your father and brother will do anything to keep their secrets buried." I heard Marcus's footsteps retreating, followed by my front door slamming. Taking a deep breath, I emerged from my bedroom. My apartment was a mess. Marcus had apparently searched every corner looking for the painting. But I didn't care about the chaos. I had work to do. First, I photographed every inch of the painting, capturing the geometric shapes from every angle. Then I carefully copied down the coordinates from my mother's letter. According to her instructions, I needed to overlay the shapes in a specific sequence to reveal the full set of access codes. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Margaret, our old housekeeper. "Miss Sarah, men are at the house removing all your mother's things. They're looking for something in her study. Please be careful." They were destroying evidence. I had to move fast. The coordinates led to a location in the Berkshires, about 3 hours from the city. My mother had written that she purchased the property under her maiden name, keeping it hidden from my father and brother. "The lab is underground," her letter explained. "The entrance looks like an old storm cellar, but it's equipped with state-of-the-art security. Use the first sequence of numbers from the painting to gain access." I packed quickly, laptop, the painting carefully wrapped in blankets, some clothes, and my mother's letter. As I headed to my car, I noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. Marcus wasn't done yet. The drive to the Berkshires was tense. The SUV followed me for the first hour, keeping a consistent distance. I took every detour and back road I could think of, finally losing them somewhere near the Massachusetts border. By the time I reached the coordinates, it was nearly dawn. The property looked abandoned at first glance, just an overgrown field with an old farmhouse in severe disrepair. But as I walked the grounds, comparing the geometric shapes in the painting to the natural landscape, I realized my mother's genius. The shapes weren't just numbers, they were a map. The seemingly random patterns of trees and rocks matched the artwork perfectly. The storm cellar was exactly where the painting indicated. Its rusted doors looked like they hadn't been opened in decades, but when I input the first sequence into a hidden keypad, they smoothly swung open to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Motion sensor lights flickered on as I made my way down. The temperature dropped with each step, and I could hear the soft hum of ventilation systems. At the bottom, another keypad waited. This time, I needed to use the second sequence from the painting. The laboratory that emerged from the darkness took my breath away. It was like stepping into a different world. pristine white walls, advanced equipment, and rows of computers humming quietly. But what caught my eye was the wall of patents and prototypes. Dozens of innovations that I recognized from Bennett Industries products, but with one crucial difference. They all bore my mother's original signature. "Oh my God," I whispered, moving closer to examine them. These weren't just similar to Bennett Industries technology. They were the originals. My mother hadn't just been a passive observer in the company. She had been its hidden genius. A familiar voice behind me made my blood run cold. "Impressive, isn't it?" I spun around to find my father standing in the doorway, looking exactly as he had the day he died, or at least the day we thought he died. Marcus stood beside him, a satisfied smirk on his face. "Did you really think your mother was the only one who knew about this place?" my father asked, stepping into the lab. Though I must admit, hiding the coordinates in that painting was clever. We've been searching for this facility for months. I backed away, clutching my mother's letter. "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes the best way to find something is to make people stop looking for it. Your mother's death was unfortunately real, but mine? Well, let's just say it served its purpose. Though the reading was a trap, I realized. You wanted me to find the painting. "We needed you to leave us here," Marcus explained, moving to block the exit. "Mom changed all the security protocols before she died. We couldn't get in without the codes. And now," my father said, advancing slowly, "you're going to help us destroy everything in this lab. All evidence of your mother's work will disappear, and Bennett Industries' patents will remain secure." But they had made one crucial mistake. While they were talking, I had been backing toward my mother's main workstation. Her letter had mentioned an emergency protocol, a sequence of numbers that would activate something she called the Clarity Protocol. "Actually," I said, reaching behind me to input the sequence, "I don't think I will." The lab's lights suddenly shifted to a pulsing red, and a computerized voice announced, "Clarity Protocol activated. Broadcasting evidence to all major news outlets and regulatory agencies. Deletion impossible." My father's face contorted with rage. "What have you done?" "Mom called it her insurance policy," I said, feeling stronger with each word. "Every piece of evidence in this lab has just been transmitted to hundreds of secure locations. Patents, proof of theft, fraudulent documents, everything. Bennett Industries is about to face some very uncomfortable questions." Marcus lunged forward, but it was too late. Alarms began blaring, and the lab's security systems activated, sealing all exits. We were locked in, together with the truth that would destroy their empire. "She knew," I continued, watching their faces pale. "She knew you would try to bury her contributions, just like you buried her innovations. So she made sure the truth would come out, one way or another." Through the lab's small windows, I could see police lights approaching. Someone, probably the lab's security system, had alerted local authorities. My father and Marcus exchanged panicked looks as the sound of sirens grew closer. The painting that had started everything still sat wrapped in blankets by the door. Those seemingly worthless geometric shapes had led me exactly where I needed to go. My mother's final gift wasn't just a painting, it was justice. And as I watched my father and brother realize their perfect world was crumbling, I smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. The real story of Bennett Industries was about to be told, and this time, no one would be able to hide the truth. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police statements, news reports, and corporate chaos. I watched from my hotel room as Bennett Industries stock plummeted. Years of carefully constructed lies unraveling in real time. Bennett Industries CEO found alive, arrested for fraud. The headlines screamed. Corporate giant built on stolen patents. Mother's revenge. The hidden genius behind Bennett Tech. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. Journalists, lawyers, former employees, everyone wanted to hear my side of the story. But I was only interested in one call. Margaret, our former housekeeper, who had more revelations to share. Your mother knew this day would come, she told me, her voice heady with emotion. That's why she made me promise to give you this after the truth came out. An hour later, I sat in Margaret's small living room, holding another letter from my mother. This one was different, not instructions or coordinates, but a story. Her story. My dearest Sarah, it began. Now that you know the truth about Bennett Industries, it's time you understood your own history. You were never less than your brother. You were always meant for something more. As I read, the pieces of my life slowly shifted into focus. My mother hadn't been just another victim of my father's schemes. She had been playing a long game, preparing me for this moment from the very beginning. Those art history classes I'd taken, they weren't a waste of time as my father had claimed. They had trained my eye to spot patterns, to understand hidden meanings in plain sight. My work in restoration had taught me patience, precision, and the ability to reconstruct truth from fragments. Every time your father pushed you away from the business, my mother wrote, every time he favored Marcus, he was unknowingly helping to prepare you for this moment. You learned to think differently, to see what others missed. While Marcus was learning to maintain the lies, you were learning to expose them. A knock at Margaret's door interrupted my reading. A woman in a crisp suit stood outside, holding a briefcase. Ms. Bennett, I'm Alexander Chen from the SEC. We need to discuss your mother's patents. The next few hours were a crash course in just how extensive my mother's preparations had been. She hadn't just documented the stolen patents. She had continued inventing, working in secret in her underground lab. The painting's coordinates had led not only to evidence of past theft, but to innovations that could transform the industry. Your mother filed these patents under a trust, Alexandra explained, spreading documents across Margaret's coffee table, a trust that names you as the sole beneficiary. My hands trembled as I looked at the paperwork. Dozens of patents, all legally protected, all now belonging to me. Not just the old innovations my father had stolen, but new ones, years ahead of current technology. Bennett Industries doesn't just owe you restitution for the stolen patents, Alexandra continued. They've built their entire infrastructure around your mother's technology. They can't operate without it. So what does that mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. It means, Ms. Bennett, that you now effectively control the company that cast you aside. While my father and Marcus sat in jail awaiting trial, I walked into Bennett Industries headquarters the next morning not as the forgotten daughter, but as its new owner. The board of directors, desperate to save the company from complete collapse, had no choice but to accept my terms. Standing in my father's former office, I found another surprise, a wall safe hidden behind the painting that had once hung there. The combination? The final sequence of numbers from my mother's painting. Inside was a personal diary detailing every innovation he had stolen, every inventor he had betrayed. But more importantly, it contained a list of names, people like my mother who had been cheated out of their rightful recognition. 1 month later, I stood on a stage at a hastily convened press conference announcing the company's new direction. Bennett Industries was built on stolen dreams, I told the assembled crowd. Today we begin making things right. We're establishing a foundation to compensate every inventor who was wronged by the previous management. But more than that, we're transforming the company into what it should have been all along, an incubator for innovation, where brilliant minds are celebrated, not exploited. The painting that started it all now hangs in my new office, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. The geometric shapes that once concealed my mother's secret now represent something else, the pattern of a better future, one built on truth instead of lies. Marcus wrote to me from prison, alternating between threats and pleas for help. I sent back a single photograph. The painting, now hanging exactly where our father's portrait used to be. He would understand the message. His world of deception was over. My father maintained his silence, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth he had fought so hard to bury was now his legacy. The great John Bennett would be remembered not as a visionary businessman, but as a thief who stole his own wife's genius. Late one evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, Margaret brought me one final letter from my mother. This one had been timed to arrive exactly 1 month after the company's transformation began. My darling Sarah, it read, if you're reading this, you've done more than just expose the truth. You've begun to rebuild from the ashes of deception. I never wanted you to inherit a corrupt empire. I wanted you to have the chance to build something honest, something worthy of your heart. I traced my fingers over her handwriting, feeling closer to her than ever before. The worthless painting had been anything but worthless. It had been the key to everything. More than that, it had been my mother's way of showing me that I had inherited something far more valuable than money or status. I had inherited her vision for a better world. 2 years later, Bennett Industries, now renamed Aurora Innovations, is unrecognizable from what it once was. We've become a leader not just in technology, but in ethical business practices. The foundation has helped dozens of inventors reclaim their stolen innovations, and our incubator program has launched countless new careers. The painting still hangs in my office, its geometric shapes now a familiar comfort. Sometimes, late at night, I could swear they shift slightly, as if my mother is still there, leaving me new patterns to unravel, new truths to discover. But the most important truth was there all along, hidden in plain sight, just like those numbers. Success built on lies will always crumble, but success built on truth and justice will stand the test of time. Marcus was released from prison last week. He sent me a message asking to meet, to talk about rebuilding our family. I haven't responded yet. Some patterns, I've learned, are better left unchanged. Instead, I spend my time focusing on the future. The company hosts an annual innovation fair where young inventors can showcase their ideas without fear of theft. Last year's winner was a young woman whose story reminded me of my mother. Brilliant, underestimated, but unwavering in her vision. As I handed her the award, I saw my mother's painting reflected in the glass trophy. The geometric shapes seemed to dance with approval, reminding me that sometimes the greatest inheritances aren't the ones we can hold in our hands, but the ones that transform us from within. The worthless painting had given me something priceless: the truth about my past, control of my future, and most importantly, the chance to ensure that no other brilliant mind would ever be silenced or stolen from again. And that, I know, would make my mother prouder than any fortune ever could. Being an identical twin is like living with a mirror that has its own agenda. For 28 years, I shared everything with my sister Madeline. Same face, same voice, same silver blonde hair that our grandmother always said marked us as true Blackwoods. But we couldn't have been more different on the inside. I'm Emma Blackwood, the twin who chose a quiet life running a small art gallery in Boston. Madeleine became a high-powered investment banker in New York, collecting designer labels and wealthy boyfriends like trophies. Our parents were prouder of her, naturally. Who wouldn't prefer a daughter who made millions over one who spent her days hanging paintings? But our grandmother, Catherine, was different. She saw through the surface similarities, understood who we really were beneath our identical faces. While our parents fawned over Madeleine's banking success, Grandma quietly supported my passion for art, helping me open my gallery when no one else would. "You have a gift, Emma," she'd tell me during our Sunday afternoon teas in her Victorian mansion. "You see beauty where others see only dollar signs." Those afternoons were sacred. Madeleine never came. She was always too busy with work. But that was fine with me. It meant I had Grandma Catherine all to myself. Then came the call that changed everything. I was in my gallery, hanging a new collection, when my phone buzzed. My mother's voice was tight with barely controlled grief. "Emma, it's Grandma Catherine. There was an accident." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the edge of my desk, knocking over a cup of coffee. The dark liquid spread across the pristine white surface like spilled ink. "What happened?" "A car crash. She didn't make it." I don't remember much about the next few hours. Somehow, I made it to my apartment, packed a bag, canceled appointments. My assistant Jennifer promised to handle everything at the gallery. The drive to my grandmother's estate in the Berkshires was a blur of tears and memories. Every mile marker reminded me of another Sunday tea, another quiet conversation, another moment when Grandma Catherine had been the only person who truly saw me. I arrived to find the sprawling Victorian mansion already full of relatives. Cousins I barely knew lounged in the parlor. Aunts whispered in corners. Uncles argued about property values. My parents stood in the foyer, greeting people with practiced sadness. But Madeleine was nowhere to be seen. "She's flying in from Dubai," my mother explained, smoothing her already perfect hair. "Some important client meeting she couldn't reschedule." Of course. Even our grandmother's death wouldn't disrupt Madeleine's precious career. The next few days passed in a haze of funeral arrangements and family politics. I retreated to my grandmother's library whenever I could, surrounding myself with her beloved books and the faint scent of her rose perfume that still lingered in the air. That's where I was when Madeleine finally arrived, 3 days after the accident. "Oh good, you're here," she said, dropping her Hermes bag on an antique table. "Have they read the will yet?" No hello, no tears, not even a pretense of grief. "She's barely cold," I said, my voice tight with anger. Madeleine rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Emma. We all knew this was coming." Grandma was old. She was 68. Details. She waved her hand dismissively. "The point is, there's $40 million at stake. Plus the house, the art collection. We need to be practical." I stared at my twin, trying to find some trace of the sister I'd grown up with. We still had the same face, but looking at her was like seeing my features arranged into a stranger's expression. "The reading is tomorrow," I said finally. "Mr. Harrison, Grandma's lawyer, is handling everything." "Perfect." Madeleine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Get some rest, sis. Tomorrow's going to be interesting." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. I was too exhausted, too grief-stricken to analyze my sister's cryptic comments. That was my first mistake. The next morning, I woke early. and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The house was quiet, most of the relatives still asleep in their various guest rooms. But as I passed the study, I heard voices. "Everything's arranged." Madeline's voice, low and urgent, just like you asked. A male voice I didn't recognize. "The papers are perfect. No one will question it." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. And the original? Destroyed, along with all the copies. As far as anyone knows, this is the only version. "Good." Madeline again, satisfied. "You should go. The reading's in 3 hours." I quickly stepped back as the door opened. A man in a cheap suit hurried past without seeing me, clutching a briefcase. Madeline emerged a moment later, startling when she saw me. "Emma, you're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said carefully. "Who was that?" "Oh, just someone from the bank." She adjusted her silk blouse. Boring paperwork stuff. But I'd seen the man slip something into her designer bag, something that looked suspiciously like legal documents. The will reading was scheduled for 10 a.m. in the main library. Mr. Harrison, a small man with wire-rimmed glasses who'd been our grandmother's lawyer for 30 years, arranged us all in a semicircle. My parents sat together on the antique sofa. Various aunts and uncles claimed the matching armchairs. Cousins perched on ottomans or leaned against bookshelves. Madeline took a seat directly across from Mr. Harrison, her expression carefully neutral. I chose to stand by the window, next to the painting of roses that Grandma Catherine had always loved. Something felt wrong. The conversation I'd overheard, Madeline's strange behavior. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to express my personal condolences. Catherine was more than just a client to me. She was a dear friend." Madeline shifted impatiently. Yes, very sad. Shall we proceed?" Mr. Harrison blinked, taken aback by her tone. "Of course." "Well, the terms are quite straightforward. Catherine was very specific about her wishes." He opened his briefcase, but Madeline interrupted. "Actually," she said smoothly, "I have something you should see first." She pulled out a document, the same one I'd seen the mystery man give her earlier. "What's this?" Mr. Harrison frowned, taking the papers. "Grandma's real will," Madeline announced. "Dated just 2 weeks ago. She gave it to me for safekeeping." The room erupted in whispers. I felt my heart start to pound. "This can't be right," Mr. Harrison muttered, scanning the document. "I drew up Catherine's will myself. She never mentioned." "Obviously she changed her mind," Madeline said. "As you can see, everything's perfectly legal. All the signatures are verified." I moved closer, looking over Mr. Harrison's shoulder. The will looked authentic, same legal language, same formatting. But something was wrong. The signature. It looked like Grandma's. But then I saw it. The terms of the new will were simple. The entire estate, all $40 million, plus the house and every asset, was left to Madeline Blackwood. I felt the blood drain from my face. "This is a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "Grandma would never." "Do you have proof?" Madeline challenged, her eyes glinting. "Because I have a legally binding document right here." The room fell silent as everyone stared at us, identical faces locked in a battle of wills. "Mr. Harrison," I turned to the lawyer desperately. "You know this isn't right. You knew Grandma better than anyone." "I'm sorry, Emma," he said slowly. "But if this will is authenticated, my hands are tied." Madeline's smile was triumphant. Well then, I believe that settles everything. As the sole heir, I'll need everyone to vacate the premises by tomorrow morning. You can't do this, I whispered. She stood, gathering her things with practiced elegance. I already have, dear sister, and you can't prove otherwise. As the family filed out in shocked silence, I remained rooted to the spot, staring at the painting of roses. Grandma Catherine had taught me to paint those roses herself, spending countless patient hours helping me get the shadows just right. Now my twin sister had stolen everything, our grandmother's legacy, my inheritance, even my identity. Because that signature on the will, it wasn't Grandma's at all. It was mine. Being identical twins meant sharing DNA, fingerprints, and virtually indistinguishable signatures. My entire life, I'd been careful about signing documents precisely because I knew Madeline could mimic my handwriting perfectly. But I never imagined she would use my signature to forge our grandmother's will. The day after the reading, I watched from my old bedroom window as moving trucks arrived. Madeline wasted no time claiming her prize, directing workers to pack up our grandmother's antiques and artwork. Miss Blackwood? A quiet voice interrupted my thoughts. I turned to find Agnes, our grandmother's housekeeper of 20 years, standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red from crying. I'm sorry, Agnes. I know Madeline's asked everyone to leave. That's just it. Agnes wrung her hands nervously. There's something you need to see. She led me down to the kitchen, checking twice to ensure we weren't followed. From beneath her apron, she pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Your grandmother's diary, she whispered. She asked me to keep it safe. Said it was important you find it if anything happened to her. My hands trembled as I took the notebook. Why didn't you give this to Mr. Harrison? Because Ms. Madeline was watching him like a hawk. But that's not all. Agnes glanced around again before continuing. The accident. It wasn't random. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? The day before, your grandmother was upset. She discovered something about Ms. Madeline. Something to do with her banking work. She made some calls, said she needed to fix things. I opened the diary with shaking fingers. The last entry was dated the day before the crash. Called Marcus about M's activities at Sterling Bank. The numbers don't add up. Offshore accounts, missing client funds. She's been stealing millions. I can't stay silent. Emma deserves to know the truth about her sister. Tomorrow I'll. The entry ended there. Tomorrow never came. There's more, Agnes said. The morning of the accident, I overheard Ms. Madeline on the phone in the garden. She said something about taking care of it today and making it look accidental. The diary slipped from my fingers. Are you saying? I'm saying be careful, Miss Emma. Your sister, she's not who you think she is. A sharp voice cut through our conversation. Agnes, why aren't these boxes packed yet? Madeline stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing as she saw us together. Agnes quickly gathered some cleaning supplies and hurried out. Still here, Emma. Madeline's tone was honey-sweet poison. I thought I made it clear the house needs to be emptied. I met her gaze steadily. Did you kill her? The question hung in the air between us. Madeline's smile never wavered. What an awful thing to suggest, she said softly. Grief makes people say such terrible things. She knew about Sterling Bank. I pressed. About the missing money. Something flickered in Madeline's eyes. Surprise? Fear? But it was gone instantly. I don't know what you think you know, she said. But I suggest you leave. Now, before you say something you'll regret. Or what? You'll arrange another accident? She stepped closer, Her face, my face, inches from mine. "Prove it," she whispered. "Prove any of it. You can't, can you? Just like you can't prove the will is forged. It's your word against mine, sister dear. And I have $40 million worth of lawyers on my side." She was right. I had no proof, just a diary entry, a housekeeper's statement, and horrible suspicions. But I had something else, the truth about who I was, who we both were. "You forgot one thing, Madeline," I said quietly. "Grandma didn't just teach me about art. She taught me about family history, about the Blackwood legacy. Boring stories about dead relatives," she scoffed. "What's your point?" "My point is, I know things you don't. Things about this house, about Grandma's real fortune. Things she only shared during those Sunday teas you were too busy to attend." Uncertainty crept into her expression. "You're bluffing?" "Am I?" I smiled, channeling her own cold confidence. "Guess you'll find out." I walked out of the kitchen, feeling her eyes boring into my back. At the front door, I paused. "Oh, and Madeline? Don't touch the painting of roses in the library. Some art is worth more than money." It was a shot in the dark, but I saw fear flash across her face. She knew something about that painting, something she didn't want me to discover. In my car, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to an old friend from art school who now worked as an authenticator for major auction houses. "Sarah, I need you to look into something. A painting of roses, circa 1940s, artist unknown." The second call was to a private investigator recommended by one of my gallery clients. "I need everything you can find on Sterling Bank's offshore accounts. Focus on transactions authorized by Madeline Blackwood." Finally, I called Mr. Harrison. "Meet me tomorrow," I said when he answered. "There's something you need to know about Grandma's real will. Most people think revenge takes a long time, but sometimes justice strikes like lightning, fast, bright, and impossible to escape. It took exactly 3 days to destroy everything Madeline had stolen." I met Mr. Harrison at a small cafe far from the estate. His hands shook slightly as he read Grandma's diary. "My God," he whispered. "I knew something was wrong. But this, I need your help," I said. "The painting in the library, did Grandma ever mention anything special about it?" He looked up sharply. "She did, actually. About a month ago, she had me update her will. Said something about important papers being where the roses never fade." My heart raced. The painting. I'd always wondered why Grandma insisted it never be moved, never be cleaned by anyone but her. "Mr. Harrison, I need you to stall the estate transfer, just for 24 hours. He nodded grimly. "I'll file some paperwork. Technical errors that need reviewing. But Emma, be careful. If what this diary suggests is true." "I know," I said quietly. "My sister is capable of murder." Back at my hotel, messages waited from both my contacts. Sarah, the art authenticator, confirmed my suspicions about the painting. The private investigator's findings about Sterling Bank were even more explosive. I took a deep breath and made one final call to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. That night, I waited until 3 a.m. before returning to the estate. The security code hadn't been changed. Madeline always did underestimate me. The house was dark, empty except for the furniture Madeline hadn't yet moved. In the library, moonlight filtered through the tall windows, illuminating the painting of roses. With trembling fingers, I felt along its heavy gilt frame. There, a slight catch, a hidden spring. The painting swung away from the wall like a door, revealing a small safe built into the wall behind it. I smiled, remembering all those Sunday afternoons when Grandma taught me to paint roses. She hadn't just been teaching art. She'd been showing me exactly where this safe was located. The combination was simple: my birthday, not Madeline's. She'd been born 2 minutes later. This was how Grandma had always told us apart, by remembering who came first. Inside the safe lay a stack of documents: bank records, surveillance photos, and a USB drive. But most importantly, there was another will. The real will, dated just 3 days before Grandma's death, with a letter attached. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've discovered what Madeline has been doing at Sterling Bank. The stolen money, the fake accounts, all of it. I've gathered proof, but she knows I know. I fear what she might do. I'm leaving everything to you because you're the only one who understands what truly matters. The money, the house, they're just things. But integrity, truth, justice, these are the real Blackwood legacy. All my love, Grandma Catherine. P.S. Give the USB drive to the FBI. They'll know what to do. At that moment, lights flooded the library. Madeline stood in the doorway, her face twisted with rage. "How did you know?" she demanded. "Because I paid attention," I said calmly, despite my pounding heart. "All those Sunday teas you missed, all those boring family stories you ignored. Grandma wasn't just sharing memories, she was leaving clues." "Give me those papers," she snarled, stepping forward. "It's too late," I replied. "The FBI already has copies of everything. They're probably at Sterling Bank right now, seizing records of all your offshore accounts." Her face went pale. "You're lying." "Am I? Check your phone." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Her hands shook as she read the message. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." "Yes," I said quietly. "It's over, Madeline. The fraud, the fake will, and—" I held up Grandma's diary. The truth about her death. She lunged for me, but never reached me. FBI agents emerged from the shadows, where they'd been waiting all along. I watched as they led my sister away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally shattered. The aftermath was a whirlwind of headlines. Bank Herred, Fraud, and Murder. Twin sisters, inheritance battle, Reval, Dagwal Heskijin, Sterling Bank Skadal, Bly Alherones, in Client Philandes Messing. The truth came out quickly after that. Madeline had been stealing from clients for years, hiding the money in offshore accounts. When Grandma discovered her scheme, Madeline arranged the accident, not realizing Grandma had already documented everything. The forged will was just her final attempt to gain control of all evidence against her. She never imagined the real proof would be hidden behind a simple painting of roses. 1 year later, I stood in the library again, now restored to its former glory. Madeline was serving 20 years for fraud and murder. The stolen money had been returned to Sterling Bank's clients, and Grandma's real will had been executed exactly as she intended. I kept the house, turning part of it into an art gallery showcasing young artists. The painting of roses still hung in its place of honor, no longer hiding secrets, but serving as a reminder. Sometimes justice blooms in unexpected places. Agnes still worked as housekeeper, now more family than employee. Mr. Harrison helped manage the charitable foundation I'd established with half of my inheritance, supporting arts education for underprivileged children. Your grandmother would be proud, he told me one afternoon, watching local kids take art lessons in what used to be the formal dining room. I smiled, touching the locket I now wore, the one Grandma had always worn during our Sunday teas. Inside was a tiny painted rose, a reminder that beauty and truth go hand in hand. She knew, I said softly. She knew that someday the truth would come out. That's why she left all those clues, all those little breadcrumbs for me to follow. And Madeline, he asked, do you ever visit her? I shook my head. Some twins grow apart. Some were never truly connected to begin with. She chose her path, just as I chose mine. Later that evening, I sat in Grandma's library, my library now, and opened her diary to the last page. Below her final entry, I had added my own. Dear Grandma, justice has been served. The roses still bloom, the truth still shines, and your legacy lives on. Not in money or property, but in the lessons you taught me, that art can reveal truth, that patience defeats greed, and that real wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in integrity. Thank you for showing me the way. Love always, Emma. Outside, the sun set over the Berkshire Hills, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Sometimes karma doesn't just strike. It blooms, slowly and surely, like flowers in an eternal garden. The day I was kicked out, it was raining. Not the gentle spring rain that nurtures flowers, but the kind that stings your skin and soaks through your clothes in seconds. I stood there, my hastily packed duffel bag getting heavier by the minute as water seeped into the fabric. You're a disappointment, Oliver. My father's words cut through the sound of raindrops hitting the pavement. A complete failure. My mother stood behind him in the doorway, arms crossed, her face a mask of disapproval. The same face she'd worn when I told them I wanted to study computer engineering instead of taking over their precious Mason Industries. All these years of grooming you for the company, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. And you throw it away for what? Some foolish dream of creating apps. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and my crime was refusing to attend the business school they'd chosen. I had different plans, different dreams. I wanted to build something of my own, not inherit their legacy. If you walk away now, my father's voice turned cold. Don't ever come back. You'll get nothing from us. No support, no inheritance, nothing. I adjusted the strap of my bag and met his gaze. Fine. That one word seemed to shock them both. They had expected me to break, to give in like I always had before. But something had changed in me. Maybe it was the years of being compared to my perfect older brother James, or maybe it was just time to stop being the person they wanted me to be and start being myself. I turned and walked away, each step taking me further from the luxury mansion I'd grown up in. Their final words followed me down the driveway. You'll fail, Oliver. You'll come crawling back when you realize how worthless your dreams are. But I didn't look back, not even once. The first few months were exactly as hard as they'd probably hoped. I crashed on my best friend Mike's couch, worked 2 jobs, one at a local electronics store during the day and delivering pizzas at night. Every spare moment was spent learning, coding, developing my skills. Mike's tiny apartment became my sanctuary. While my family attended galas and business functions, I sat cross-legged on a worn-out couch, surrounded by programming books and energy drink cans, my laptop balanced precariously on my knees. You're insane, man, Mike would say, watching me code until sunrise. But the good kind of insane. He didn't understand the technical aspects of what I was building, but he understood drive. He understood the need to prove yourself. 6 months in, I had my first breakthrough. A small app I developed caught the attention of a local tech startup. They didn't offer me millions, but they offered something more valuable, a chance. A junior developer position with flexible hours so I could continue working on my own projects. I took it without hesitation. My family's company, Mason Industries, was all about traditional manufacturing, tools, machinery, the kind of business that had made my grandfather rich in the 1960s. They couldn't understand why anyone would want to work with invisible products like software and apps. But I saw the future. While they were stuck in their old ways, I was learning about artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the endless possibilities of the digital age. 1 year turned into 2, then 3. I moved from the junior developer position to lead developer at another company. My first major app, a revolutionary project management tool, started gaining traction. I wasn't rich yet, but I was making enough to rent my own small apartment and fully focus on my work. During those years, I heard snippets about my family through mutual acquaintances. James had taken my place as the heir apparent to Mason Industries. My parents hosted charity galas and business dinners, maintaining their image as pillars of the business community. They had effectively erased me from their narrative. That was fine by me. I was building my own story. The turning point came 4 years after that rainy night. My project management app had evolved into something bigger, an entire suite of business tools powered by artificial intelligence. I called it Novatech Solutions. When the venture capital offers started coming in, I was ready. I had learned enough about business to know my worth. The first round of funding valued Novatech at $20 million. 6 months later, that value had tripled. I moved into a penthouse apartment in the city's tech district, but kept living relatively simply. Every dollar I earned went back into developing better products, hiring the best talent, expanding our reach. Mike, who had supported me through those early days, became my head of operations. "Look at us now," he'd say, standing in our sleek office overlooking the city. From delivering pizzas to delivering cutting-edge tech solutions. Mike, who had supported me through those early days, became my head of operations. "Look at us now," he'd say, standing in our sleek office overlooking the city. From delivering pizzas to delivering cutting-edge tech solutions. I smiled at his comments, but never let success go to my head. I remembered too well what it felt like to stand in the rain with nothing but a duffel bag and determination. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my office, reviewing potential acquisition targets, companies whose technology could enhance Novatech's capabilities. A familiar name caught my eye: Mason Industries. My family's company had been struggling. While I had been embracing the future, they had stubbornly clung to the past. Their stock price had been declining steadily for the past year. They needed a digital transformation to survive, but my father was too proud to admit it. I dug deeper into their financials. The situation was worse than I thought. They needed capital, and they needed it fast. About $5 million would keep them afloat long enough to modernize their operations. As I sat there, staring at the numbers on my screen, my phone rang. The number was one I hadn't seen in 7 years, but I would never forget it. My father's number. I let it ring 3 times, each ring echoing the words he had spoken that rainy night. "You're a disappointment, Oliver. A complete failure. Don't ever come back." On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Hello, Father," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I've been expecting your call." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought he might have hung up. Then I heard him clear his throat. "Oliver," he said, his voice lacking its usual authority. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline. "Yes," I replied. "I believe we do." The Mason Industries headquarters hadn't changed in 7 years. The same imposing granite facade, the same golden letters announcing the company name, the same stern-faced security guards at the entrance. But I was different. As I walked through the lobby, memories flooded back. Summer afternoons spent watching my father in board meetings, weekends when he dragged me along to inspect the factory floor, endless lectures about responsibility and legacy. "Mr. Mason?" The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she recognized my face. "Your father is expecting you in the main conference room." I nodded, adjusting my Italian suit. Not out of nervousness, those days were long gone, but out of habit. Success had taught me the importance of appearances, though unlike my family, I knew they were just that, appearances. The elevator ride to the top floor gave me time to review the numbers in my head. Mason Industries was hemorrhaging money. Their quarterly reports showed a 60% decline in profits. Their stock had plummeted from $85 to $12 per share. They needed more than just capital. They needed a complete overhaul. The conference room doors opened to reveal a scene I couldn't have imagined 7 years ago. My father, the mighty Richard Mason, looked older, tired. His perfectly tailored suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost. My mother sat beside him, her usually impeccable makeup slightly smudged, as if she'd been rubbing her eyes. James, my older brother, stood by the window. He'd gained weight, his face puffy from too many business dinners and too much stress. The golden boy didn't look so golden anymore. "Oliver," my father said, standing up. He extended his hand, then seemed to think better of it and pulled it back. "Thank you for coming." I took a seat at the opposite end of the table, placing my briefcase carefully in front of me. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said. "I've seen your numbers." James turned from the window, his face flushing. "You've been spying on us?" "Publicly available information, brother. Your company's decline isn't exactly a secret." My mother flinched at the word your. Not our. Not anymore. "We've had some setbacks," my father began, his voice taking on the smooth tone he used for difficult business negotiations. "The market has been unpredictable, and our traditional customer base. Your traditional customer base is shrinking because you've refused to adapt." I cut in. "The world is digital now. Manufacturing isn't just about machinery anymore. It's about smart factories, IoT integration, predictive maintenance using AI. James scoffed. "And I suppose you're the expert now, with your little computer programs." I pulled out my phone, opened a specific app, and projected Novatech's latest quarterly report onto the conference room screen. The numbers spoke for themselves. $500 million in revenue, 300% year-over-year growth, contracts with Fortune 500 companies. The room fell silent. You're the founder of Novatech," my mother whispered. "CEO and majority shareholder," I confirmed. "Those little computer programs have built a company worth more than Mason Industries was even in its prime." My father's face had gone pale. He remembered, I was sure, every dismissive word he'd ever said about technology, every time he called my dreams worthless. "We need $5 million, he said finally, his voice hoarse. a bridge loan to implement necessary modernization changes. We can offer favorable terms. I'm not interested in a loan, I interrupted, opening my briefcase. I'm interested in acquisition. The word hung in the air like a thundercloud. James pushed away from the window, his face contorted with anger. Acquisition? You want to buy us out? Your own family? Family? I let out a quiet laugh. Wasn't it you, James, who told everyone at your engagement party that you were an only child? That you'd never had a brother? He took a step back, caught off guard that I knew about that. Oliver, my mother began, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used to use when trying to make me study business textbooks instead of programming. Surely we can work something out. We're still your parents. No, I said firmly. You lost the right to call yourselves that 7 years ago. This is purely business. I pulled out a thick contract from my briefcase and placed it on the table. Novatech will acquire Mason Industries for $25 million. That's more than generous given your current market value. We'll retain most of the workforce, modernize the facilities, and integrate your manufacturing expertise with our digital solutions. And what about us? James demanded. What happens to the family? I met his gaze steadily. You'll be offered a position in the newly formed division. A junior position where you'll have to earn any promotions based on merit, not bloodline. Father can serve as an advisor during the transition, after which he'll retire with a comfortable pension. Mother's social connections might be useful for client relations, but that's up to her. My father's hands were trembling slightly as he reached for the contract. And if we refuse, then I leave, and you can try explaining to your shareholders why you turned down a lifeline. Your stock will probably drop another 50% by next week. You might last another month. Maybe 2. Then bankruptcy. The room fell silent except for the sound of paper rustling as my father slowly turned the pages of the contract. You planned this, James accused, his voice bitter. All these years, you were just waiting for us to fail. I stood up, straightening my jacket. No, James. I was too busy succeeding to waste time waiting for your failure. You did that all on your own. How long? My mother asked suddenly. How long do we have to decide? I picked up my briefcase. The offer expires at midnight. Not a minute later. Midnight? My father's voice rose. That's impossible. We need time to review with our lawyers, to consider other options. You don't have other options, I said calmly, and you don't have time. 7 years ago, you gave me 5 minutes to decide my entire future. I'm giving you 12 hours. I'd say that's more than fair. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. I turned back to face them. When you sign, and you will sign, I want you to use the same pen you used to sign my college rejection letter, the one with the Mason Industries logo. I believe it's still in your desk drawer, Father. The look of shock on his face told me I was right. He remembered that pen, remembered using it to dash my dreams all those years ago. How did you? I'll be back at 11:45 p.m. I cut him off. Try not to be late. Time is money, after all. Isn't that what you always taught me? With that, I walked out, leaving them with their shattered pride and a contract that would change everything. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished metal and saw something I'd never seen in this building before. A winner. The next 12 hours would be interesting. Very interesting indeed. 11:43 p.m. The city lights sparkled below the Mason Industries conference room like scattered diamonds on black velvet. I stood at the same window where James had stood that morning, watching my reflection superimposed over the nighttime skyline. The door opened behind me, right on time. My father entered first, followed by my mother and James. They looked exhausted, as if they'd aged years in just 12 hours. I noticed my father clutching a small leather case, the one he kept his prized pens in. "The board has approved the acquisition," he said, his voice rough, unanimously. I turned slowly, taking in their defeated postures. I expected nothing less. After all, what choice did they have? James slumped into a chair, loosening his tie. "You've won, Oliver. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "No," I replied calmly. "What I want to hear is the truth. From all of you." My mother stepped forward, her designer dress wrinkled from a day of tense meetings. "The truth about what? About why you really pushed me away. It wasn't just about the business school, was it?" The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, my father sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. "You were too much like him," he said quietly. "Like your grandfather." That wasn't what I'd expected. "Grandfather?" "The one who started Mason Industries." My father nodded, sinking into a chair. Harold Mason was a visionary. He saw the future coming before anyone else. In the 1960s, when everyone was doing things the old way, he modernized, automated, took risks. The board thought he was crazy. Even his own father called him a fool. He pulled out the pen case, opening it with trembling fingers. But he proved them all wrong. Built this company from nothing into an empire. And you, he looked up at me. You have that same look in your eyes. That same drive. It terrified me. Because you're not like him, I finished, understanding dawning. You're a maintainer, not a builder. You wanted the company to stay exactly as it was when you inherited it. I wanted stability, he whispered. Safety. When you started talking about technology, about changing everything, I saw my father in you. And I remembered how scared I was every time he took another risk, launched another venture. My mother touched his shoulder gently. We thought we were protecting you, Oliver. And James was more like your father. Cautious, reliable, boring. James interjected with a bitter laugh. That's what you mean, isn't it? I was the safe choice, the one who wouldn't rock the boat. I walked to the conference table, spreading my hands on its polished surface. And now look where we are. The safe choice led straight to bankruptcy. The crazy dreamer built a tech empire. We were wrong, my father said, and the words seemed to physically pain him. About everything, about you. He opened the pen case and removed the Mason Industries pen, the same one he'd used to reject my college plans 7 years ago. The gold logo caught the light as he placed it on the contract. Before I sign this, he said, I need to know what really happened after that night. How did you do it? I sat down across from him, feeling an unexpected urge to finally tell my story. The first few months were hell. Worked 2 jobs, lived on Mike's couch, coded until my eyes burned. But I had something you never gave me at home. Freedom to fail. Freedom to fail, my mother echoed. Yes, because when you're already at rock bottom, when your own family has written you off as worthless, there's no pressure. Every small success is a victory. Every failure is just another lesson. I pulled out my phone, showing them the first version of what would become Novatech's flagship product. This was my first app. Buggy, ugly, barely functional. But it worked, and each version got better. James leaned forward, actually interested for the first time. And the venture capital. How did you convince them to invest? I didn't. I smiled. They convinced me. By then, I had paying customers, proven technology. I didn't need their money. They needed my innovation, just like Mason Industries needs it now. My father picked up the pen, its weight seemingly greater than he remembered. And after we sign, what happens to us really? Exactly what I said this morning. James gets a fresh start, learning the business from the ground up. Mother can maintain the social connections that bring in clients. And you, father, yes, you get to watch your company become what it should have been all along, what grandfather would have wanted it to be. He pressed the pen to paper, then hesitated. Why didn't you just let us fail? You had every right to. Because that's not what successful people do, I replied. They don't destroy. They transform. They don't settle scores. They create opportunities. Everything you taught me about business was wrong, but everything grandfather built still has value. It just needs to evolve. 11:59 p.m. The scratch of the pen on paper was the only sound in the room as my father signed away his company. My mother wiped away tears as she added her signature. James, surprisingly, signed without hesitation. As I reached for the contract, my father grabbed my wrist. Not roughly, but with an urgency I hadn't seen from him before. Oliver, he said, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. For everything. I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had once looked at me with such disappointment, and saw something new there. Respect. Maybe even a glimmer of pride. I know, I said softly, taking the contract. But it's not me you need to apologize to. It's yourself, for being too afraid to embrace change. For letting fear of failure stop you from trying anything new. Can you ever forgive us? My mother asked. I stood, tucking the contract into my briefcase. I forgave you years ago. That's why I'm here now, saving what's left of Mason Industries instead of watching it crumble. And us? James asked. Can we be a family again? That depends, I replied. Are you ready to be part of a family where success isn't measured by how well you maintain the status quo, but by how bravely you face the future? One by one they nodded. Then yes, we can try. Not as the Masons who kicked out their son for daring to dream differently, but as the Masons who learned that true legacy isn't about preserving the past. It's about building the future. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. We have a company to rebuild. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I thought about that rainy night 7 years ago. The scared 18-year-old with a duffel bag and a dream. If someone had told him that one day he'd own the building he was being kicked out of, he probably wouldn't have believed it. But that's the thing about dreams. They don't need anyone's permission to come true. They just need someone brave enough to chase them. Mike was waiting in my car outside. How'd it go, boss? I showed him the signed contract. Mason Industries is now part of Nova Tech Solutions. He grinned. And the family drama? That's a work in progress, I replied, looking up at the building that would now be part of my company. But for the first time in 7 years, it feels like there might actually be progress. Just remember, Mike said as we pulled away from the curb, no matter what happens with them, you've already proven yourself. To yourself, and that's what matters. I nodded, watching Mason Industries shrink in the rearview mirror. He was right. Success wasn't about proving my parents wrong. It was about proving myself right. Everything else was just details. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Integrating the companies. Modernizing the facilities. rebuilding family relationships, but I was ready for all of it. After all, I was Oliver Mason, the failure who succeeded, the reject who returned victorious, the son who surpassed his father's dreams by daring to dream his own. And this was just the beginning. I stood in the rain, watching the movers carry elegant furniture into my sister Emma's new mansion. A wedding gift from our parents. A $2.8 million house in the most prestigious neighborhood in Boston. Meanwhile, I lived in a small apartment above the bookstore where I worked, barely making ends meet. Isn't it perfect for them? My mother gushed, not noticing how soaked I'd gotten standing outside. Emma and James will be so happy here. And there's plenty of room for grandchildren. I forced a smile, thinking of the congratulations card I'd scraped together money to buy. It's beautiful, Mom. Emma emerged from the house, immaculate in designer clothes, her new engagement ring catching what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. Madison, you finally made it. What do you think of our little starter home? Starter home. As if a nearly $3 million mansion was just a stepping stone. It's lovely, I managed. The perfect wedding present. Oh, don't be jealous, Maddie. Emma laughed, using the nickname I'd always hated. I'm sure you'll find someone special too. Maybe one of those nice boys at the bookstore. Our mother jumped in. You know the Henderson's son is still single. He's an accountant now. Very stable career. I bit my tongue. At 32, I had a master's degree in literature and was working on my first novel. But to them, I was just the family disappointment. The daughter who chose books over business, dreams over security. I should go, I said quietly. My shift starts soon. On a Saturday? Mom frowned. But we're having a family dinner to celebrate Emma's house. Some of us have to work weekends, Mom. Emma rolled her eyes. Still so dramatic, Maddie. This is why you struggle, you know. Always choosing the hard way instead of accepting help. Help, like the full ride to business school I'd turned down. Like the position at Dad's firm I'd refused. Like the arranged dates with suitable men I'd avoided. What they never understood was that their help always came with strings. Golden handcuffs designed to shape me into their version of success. The bookstore is short-staffed, I said, already turning to leave. And I need the hours. Well, Mom sighed, at least take some leftovers home. I hate thinking of you eating alone in that tiny apartment. I didn't tell her that my tiny apartment was my sanctuary, a space filled with books, art, and peace. A place where I could write without judgment, dream without limits. The next morning, I stopped at Pete's corner store for my usual coffee. Pete, a grandfather figure who'd been running the shop for 40 years, greeted me with unusual excitement. Madison, did you check your ticket? I blinked, confused. Then I remembered. The lottery ticket I'd bought 2 days ago. A silly impulse purchase with my last $5 when the jackpot had hit record numbers. Not yet. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. What were the winning numbers? Pete's eyes sparkled. Check the news, sweetheart. I pulled out my phone, finding the lottery website. The numbers appeared on screen. 7, 13, 24, 31, 42, 53. My hands started shaking. I looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. Pete, my voice was barely a whisper. I think I won. He grinned. I know you did, honey. I watched them draw your numbers live last night. All 6 matching numbers. You just won $97 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed the counter for support. Sit down before you fall down. Pete guided me to a chair. Deep breaths. This is big news, but you need to be smart now. Don't tell anyone yet. Get a lawyer first, and for heaven's sake, sign that ticket. With trembling fingers, I signed the back of the ticket. Pete locked it in his safe, made me drink some water, and called his daughter, a respected financial attorney. Caroline will meet you in an hour, he said. She'll help you do this right. I nodded, still dazed. Pete, my family. He squeezed my shoulder. We'll find out soon enough. But right now, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you. As I waited for Caroline, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Family brunch tomorrow to discuss wedding plans. Wear something nice for once, and try not to be late like always. I stared at the message, thinking of her mansion, her perfect life, our parents' endless praise. For 20 years, I'd been the family afterthought, the daughter they'd written off as impractical, unsuccessful, lost. Now I had 97 million reasons to prove them wrong. I texted back, sorry, can't make it. I have something more important to do. For once, I wasn't lying. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new lawyer's office, signing the final papers to claim my winnings. Caroline, Pete's daughter, had been invaluable, helping me set up trusts, investment accounts, and ironclad privacy protections. Remember, she said, reviewing the documents, once we submit these, your name becomes public record. Are you ready for that? I thought of the changes I'd already made. I'd quietly resigned from the bookstore, leaving my manager a generous check to help hire and train my replacement. I'd bought a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood, using a trust to keep my name off public records. And I'd started the groundwork for my own publishing company, determined to help other overlooked writers find their voices. I'm ready, I said firmly. The next morning, my face was splashed across every news outlet in Boston. Local writer wins $97 million lottery jackpot. Bookstore employee becomes multimillionaire overnight. Madison Bennett claims record-breaking prize. My phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, distant relatives, forgotten acquaintances, all suddenly remembering my existence. But the messages I was waiting for came last. First, Emma. OMG, Maddie. Why didn't you tell us? Call me immediately. Then Mom. Madison Elizabeth Bennett. How could you keep this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where are you living? Finally, Dad. Your mother is hysterical. Call us this instant. I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea, settling into my new home office. Through the window, I could see the garden where I planned to create a reading nook. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, making the moment feel almost magical. My doorbell rang. Through the security camera, another of Caroline's suggestions, I saw them. My parents and Emma, standing on my porch. Emma was dressed like she was heading to a photo shoot, while my mother kept smoothing her designer dress nervously. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Madison, my mother burst out. We've been so worried. Why haven't you answered our calls? And how did you afford this house? The lottery money hasn't even been released yet and... Hello, Mother. I cut her off calmly. Would you like to come in? They filed into my living room, taking in the tasteful furnishings and wall-to-wall bookshelves with barely concealed surprise. Well, Emma said, running a finger along the shelf, I suppose now you can finally move to a better neighborhood. Maybe near my new house. There's a lovely little colonial for sale, only $4 million. I'm happy here, I interrupted. But thank you for your concern. Maddie, darling. My mother leaned forward, her voice dripping with honey. You have to understand our shock. This is life-changing money. You'll need guidance, proper financial advice. Your father knows several excellent wealth managers. I have a team of advisors, I said. And it's Madison, not Maddie. Don't be difficult, Emma snapped. We're trying to help. God knows you've never been good with money. Like that time I loaned you $10,000 for your starter business, I asked quietly. The one you never paid back. Emma's face flushed. That was different. I needed. What you needed was to take responsibility. I stood up, my voice steady. Something none of you have ever expected from her. Now see here. My father finally spoke, his face reddening. We've always supported you both equally. I laughed, actually laughed. Equally. You bought Emma a mansion for her wedding. You paid for her business school, her first car, her perfect wedding. What did you give me for graduation? A lecture about practical career choices. Because we worried about you, my mother cried. Your choices were so impractical. We just wanted. You wanted me to be like Emma, I finished. The perfect daughter, the sensible one. Well, guess what? My impractical choices led me here. My job at the bookstore, the one you all look down on, is where I bought the winning ticket. And now you can finally have a real life, Emma said, as if she was being generous. We can help you invest, get you into the right social circles. No. The room fell silent. What do you mean no? My father demanded. I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 envelopes. Emma, this is a cashier's check for $10,000, repaying the loan you've conveniently forgotten about. I handed her the first envelope. Mom, Dad, this is a check for $15,000, the total of every gift, every payment, every contribution you've ever made to my life. I've kept careful records. They stared at the envelopes, speechless. The third envelope, I continued, contains documents showing I've already established my own publishing company, created a charitable foundation for literacy programs, and set up my investments with one of the top firms in the country. I didn't need your guidance then, and I certainly don't need it now. But we're family, my mother whispered. Yes, we are. And family should love unconditionally. Support dreams, not squash them. Celebrate differences, not try to erase them. I walked to the door and opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation board about funding new libraries in underserved communities. You're making a mistake, my father said stiffly. You need us. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Dad, you need me. And that's the real reason you're here, isn't it? Emma stood up, her face a mask of fury. You think you're better than us now? Because of some lucky numbers? No, Emma, I always was. You just never saw it. As they left, my mother turned back, tears in her eyes. Madison, please. We made a terrible mistake. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time how small she seemed. How all of them seemed, trapped in their narrow view of success and worth. Maybe someday, I said softly, but not today. I closed the door on their protests, walking back to my office. On my desk sat the manuscript of my novel, a story about a girl finding her voice in a world that tried to silence her. It was time to write the next chapter. 6 months later, The launch party for Bennett Publishing House was everything I dreamed of. We transformed an old warehouse into a magical space filled with books, art, and possibility. Local authors whose works we'd signed mingled with literary agents and journalists, while kids from our literacy program proudly showed off their own stories in a special display area. Pete stood beside me, beaming like a proud father. "Look at what you've built, Madison, and not a penny wasted on showing off." He was right. While I could have easily bought a gleaming downtown office tower, I'd chosen to renovate this historic building instead, creating a space that felt like home to writers and readers alike. The millions I'd won had been carefully invested in education programs, in supporting new authors, in building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Saw your company in the Business Journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you. Betito, James lost his job. We could use some family support right now." I deleted the message without responding. Over the past months, they tried everything: guilt, manipulation, fake kindness, and finally, outright demands. Emma's starter mansion was apparently too small now. Mom and Dad's country club membership needed renewal. James's failed investments needed covering. I'd ignored them all. "Miss Bennett?" A young girl tugged at my sleeve. She was one of our literacy program students, clutching a notebook. "Will you read my story?" "Of course, Sophie." I led her to a quiet corner, sitting down at her level. "What's it about?" "A girl who finds a magic pen," she said shyly. "Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really important to write about." I smiled, thinking how wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. "Madison." I looked up. My mother stood there, looking uncomfortable in the casual atmosphere. She'd lost some of her polished perfection. The past months had been hard on them, I knew. Dad's firm had lost several major clients. Emma's perfect marriage was showing cracks, and their social circle had begun to shrink as their resources dwindled. "Mom, this is a private event." "I know. I had to talk to you." She glanced at Sophie. "Alone?" I turned to Sophie. "Why don't you show your story to Miss Sarah? She's our children's book editor." After Sophie scampered off, I faced my mother. "Well, your father's company is failing," she said bluntly. "Emma's house is being foreclosed. Everything's falling apart, and you're here playing with children's stories." I stood up, anger flaring. "Playing? Look around, Mom. Really look. See those kids? They're learning to love reading, to believe in their own voices. See those authors? They're getting chances they never had before. I'm not playing. I'm building something real. But your family has never respected my choices." I cut in. "Even now, you're not here because you care about what I've built. You're here because you need money." She flinched. "We're still your family." "Are you?" I walked her over to our wall of success stories. Photos of children reading, authors signing their first contracts, community programs making real change. Family celebrates each other's victories. Family supports each other's dreams. When was the last time you asked about my novel? My goals? My happiness? I don't know. Exactly. I turned to face her. The lottery didn't change who I am, Mom. It just gave me the freedom to stop seeking approval I was never going to get. Tears filled her eyes. "We were wrong. I see that now. But can't you forgive us?" "Forgiveness isn't the issue," I said gently. "I forgave you months ago. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. What do you want from us?" Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore. And until you can want a relationship with me that isn't about money or status or your idea of success, we don't have anything to discuss. A commotion near the entrance caught my attention. Emma had arrived with Dad and James in tow. Really? I sighed. You all came to ambush me at my company's launch. We're desperate. Emma cried, mascara running down her cheeks. James lost everything in that investment scheme. The bank is taking our house, and Daddy's company is dying. Please, Maddie, you have to help us. The room had gone quiet. Our guests tried to pretend they weren't watching the drama unfold. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Dad, gray and deflated without his usual power. Emma, designer clothes now slightly worn, desperate for a bailout. Mom, torn between pride and need. No, I said firmly. No. Dad's voice cracked. I'll make you all a different offer instead. I pulled out my phone, pulling up some photos. This is Carter Financial Services. They're looking for experienced advisors with community connections. Dad, they've agreed to interview you for a senior position. No guarantees, but a fair shot. I swiped to the next photo. Emma, the local arts center needs a fundraising coordinator. With your social skills and event planning experience, you'd be perfect. James, my friend's construction company is hiring project managers. Real work, fair pay. You want us to work for other people. Emma looked horrified. I want you to earn your own way. Like I did. Build something real. Find out who you are without the fancy titles and borrowed money. And if we refuse, Dad asked stiffly, then you'll figure something else out. But you won't get a dime from me to maintain the lifestyle that made us all so unhappy. Mom stepped forward, surprising me. The Arts Center, they really think Emma would be good at fundraising? Yes, because she is good at it. When she's actually trying, not just playing the perfect daughter. Emma wiped her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. I don't know how to be anything else. Yes, you do. I took her hand, the first time we touched in months. You're smart, capable, and determined. Use those qualities for something meaningful instead of just appearances. Dad cleared his throat. The position at Carter Financial. When's the interview? Tomorrow at 10. Don't wear your Rolex. Show them your experience, not your ego. One by one, they nodded. Not happy, not grateful, but perhaps thoughtful. As they left, Mom turned back. Your company, it's really amazing, Madison. I'm sorry we never saw. I know, I said softly. Maybe someday you'll see me too. After they were gone, Pete appeared at my side. You okay, kiddo? I looked around at my publishing house, at the dreams being born, the stories being told, the lives being changed. You know what, Pete? I really am. Sophie came running back, waving her notebook. Ms. Bennett. Ms. Sarah loved my story. She said maybe someday it could be a real book. I knelt down beside her. Want to know a secret, Sophie? Every real book starts with someone brave enough to tell their story. Like you. Like all of us. Later that night, I sat in my garden reading nook, working on my novel. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I have an interview at the Arts Center tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled, typing back, be yourself, your real self. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me the chance to show my family and myself what real wealth looked like. Not the money in my bank account, but the courage to finally be exactly who I was meant to be. And that was worth more than any number could measure.